So a few weeks ago, I made a big documentary about the most influential movie on like my filmmaking creative life of all time, which was Trey Parker's Cannibal the Musical. A retrospective on the content of the film itself, and then a deep dive into the recent Blu-ray releases. You know, I was alerted by many of our fans. You know, it is really awesome to have a podcast like this, because when there's something relevant to your interests that comes out, everybody's like, "Did you know? Did you know that macaroni and cheese just got released in the supermarket?" And so, yeah, there were actually, I think the first one I heard about was the Refused Films Blu-ray release. And then I think like a week or two later, I heard about the Vinegar Syndrome release. And I was like, wow, for some reason, I thought Cannibal would just never be on Blu-ray. I just figured, you know, it was shot on 4x3, 16. I assumed that there was some missing media, challenges around it. I didn't know that for sure. I just kind of assumed. So I got my hands on them earlier in the year. And normally what we do on this podcast is when there's something interesting I want to talk about, I just talk about it here. We make a segment out of it, add some clips to it, and put it up. But my friend Dan, also from the UK, he was like, hey, I think you should do a documentary. The reason for that was I started doing like deep dive film archivist type crap where I was like, doing screen grabs and comparing it to my 2008 DVD and trying to understand like what the sources could have been. I was like Da Vinci coding Cannibal the Musical. Yeah, so I have a friend, Zach Bynes, who he hosts a podcast called Talkin' Troma. I met him at Troma Dance in 2006. He and his friend Richard had a movie there called The Misled Romance of Cannibal Girl and Incest Boy. It was shot on 16, and it was, basically a snuff film. But I got to watch it at a bar called Broovies in Salt Lake City. I think, it might have been in Park City because it was near Sundance. But anyway, I had my first film there. So anyway, I knew he worked on this edition of the movie, the Refused Films UK release. And so I had to get both. I got the VHS and everything else. I put out the video. And the dude who made the Blu-ray, it's Liam Regan, who's joined us as a guest on the podcast. He's responsible for taking like one of the most special movies I've ever seen and preserving it. And I'll go a step further and say, of the two, I ruled in favor of Liam's version of the film. I think it is the definitive way to watch the movie. So thanks for coming on, Liam.
No, I mean, the pleasure's all mine, Frankie. Thank you. And I'm so glad that you like the Cannibal Musical release. I'm really a filmmaker, but when you make your own movies, it's hard to kind of like generate revenue. So I decided to take the distribution in my own hands. So I released my first movie, My Bloody Banjo, and then the sequel, Eating Miss Campbell, which is also produced by Troma. So for me, the next step would be, okay, let's license some Troma movies. Now, I've been a Troma fan since I was like 11 years old. When I first saw Toxic Avenger 2, it was the slapstick violence and the hyper reality that really turned me on. So because I was lurking the Troma forums like in 96, 97, and 98, that's when I first heard of this film called Cannibal the Musical. Now, I heard of Cannibal the Musical beforehand in the UK, but in the UK it was titled Alfred Packer the Musical.
Released by Screen Edge?
That's correct, sir. Yes, Screen Edge, which is a defunct indie UK VHS label over here in the mid-90s. So Jason McHugh, Trey and Matt, they actually sold the rights, the UK rights first. It premiered at Rain Dance, I believe, in 1994. So I always knew about this Alfred Packer the Musical. So when Troma was promoting Cannibal the Musical on the website at the time, I was like, could this be the same thing? And this was really before South Park was big over here, because we didn't get South Park until, I'd say, probably April 1998. And I think you guys got it, was it September 1997? You guys get South Park?
August 97 in the US,
That's right, yeah. So, So I first saw Cannibal when South Park Series 2 premiered on Channel 4 in the UK. They had something called South Park Night, where they would show I believe it was the Not Without My Anus episode, and then they showed
so they started with Terrence and Phillip in the UK. They're like, this will ease them in.
Right, exactly. And and then they also showed, did you guys ever see that documentary, Going Down to South Park?
Yes, it's Not only do I, first of all, I love that documentary. It was aired as a 3-parter here, it was released on some of our commercial VHS releases of South Park. They did like a limited run of. It wasn't like the standard Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3. It was like South Park Best ofs or something like Chimpokomon and whatever. And they would release parts of that documentary, and eventually it was on DVD. But I watched that on Real Media on my home computer a billion times. I don't think I realized it was a UK produced thing. All I know is I just hung off of like every word in it. And then recently I bought the VHS from the UK release of the VHS.
Yes.
I grabbed that. It was like $50 or something. Wow. And I don't have a player that will play it, but it was just a cool relic.
No, of course. Yeah. I mean, that actual VHS, I think it came as like a bonus in one of the box sets they used to do in the UK, the VHS box sets, which is really popular. So Cannibal the Musical was a part of that South Park night. It actually screened after the Going Down South Park documentary. And I remember watching it, and it didn't start with the Troma leader or anything. You know, usually it starts with Lloyd Kaufman and Michael Hurst presents a Troma team release. It was just straight into the Avenging Conscious production. And it just blew me away. I mean, I grew up loving musicals anyway. I mean, Sound of Music's my favorite movie about Nazis. So, you know, Cannibal the Musical is, you know, right up there. And being a huge Troma fan, I just thought, well, why is no one part of Cannibal the Musical on Blu-ray? So when I was like deciding which films to license, I was like, okay, Tox is a no-brainer. Kabuki Man, why not? Because I feel Kabuki Man is one of Troma's underrated flicks.
It's shot nicely, Kabuki Man.
Beautiful. Yeah. And then Cannibal the Musical. Because I used to watch that movie all the time as a kid. In fact, when I used to have a mini disc recorder, I would connect it to the back of my DVD player, play the Troma DVD of Cannibal, and record my own soundtrack, just so I could listen back to the music and everything. And obviously, during the early 2000s, we had WinMX, Napster, Kazaa, so I was already downloading like DVDA stuff, like live sets from DVDA.
Yep.
That was my
They
childhood.
did I Am Chewbacca.
I am Chewbacca. I have no home.
David Kelly, TV Warrior.
David Kelly, TV warrior. David Kelly, TV warrior.
I did a school play. My senior year of high school, they were like, hey, like if anybody wants to write a play, maybe we could perform one. And I wrote David E. Kelly, TV Warrior. So that exists on the internet, actually. You can see it. I'm in it. But a pretty esoteric release by DVDA. What else did they did a Crack. Everybody loves Crack.
Everybody loves crack. I love crack. You want crack? You want crack? Everybody loves crack.
I have a copy. It was from like Lap Dance, right? Jason McHugh's Lap Dance. And it's like he's got like a really hoarse voice. He's just Trey is just suffering through Now You're a Man. And a very high tempo version of What Would Brian Boitano Do? I've never seen a man eat so many chicken wings. I would love to learn more about, because I know that Troma has put out a number of their own Blu-rays. Like you can get from them direct, Romeo and Juliet, Toxie, Poultrygeist, I know is available. Interestingly, they never did Cannibal, which is kind of curious. Like that would be like one of their top movies, you would think. And am I pronouncing it right? That I went to your commercial to make sure. Should I be pronouncing it Refuse Films like that?
That's right, Refuse. That's right.
Refuse Films and Troma Entertainment presents.
My wife was like, maybe it's like refuse, like in it,
Like garbage.
Like for like if you're cutting on a Steenbeck and you have like the refuse bin, like maybe it's a film reference or something. Plus, like it's bottom of the barrel, like B movie type. I don't know. I thought she thought maybe it's that clever. I was like, no, I think it's refuse.
Oh no! It's definitely a double entendre. I'm that smart. I just why not?
Exactly.
I'll take credit for that one.
But I think I think I did mispronounce in my documentary. I think it's De Gauser, the other label, and I think I said De Gosser. I think I got that one wrong. But anyway.
And I say it's a De Gauser day.
I'm interested in that. I had never heard of anybody licensing like any third party label. And when I received both, I kind of, I popped both in day one. And I was like, oh, one of these really feels like it's got nothing to do with Troma, which is the Vinegar Syndrome one. That one feels like it's like, I don't know, like Library of Congress, for educational purposes only. Here is Cannibal the Musical. And one of them feels like it's akin to the DVD releases that I had, I was so familiar with, especially that 2000 one, that one where the animated
yellow cover.
Yeah. That one, that was the one that kind of got me like a little deeper into the Troma world because it had commercials with Troma stuff on it. And they always have that Radiation March thing in everything they released. But just tell me, like, what is so if you're an independent filmmaker, you're working with Troma for distribution for your own films, and you're like, hey, I would love to put together like boutique, highly cared for, stuffed with special features, go back to the original master tapes for all this stuff. I would like to put out that kind of a release. What does that look like for approaching them, and how friendly are they to that? Like, just walk us through that a little bit.
Sure, yeah. So I emailed Michael Hers, who is the co-owner of Troma, along with Lloyd Kaufman. And I just, explained my desire really for, Troma to release boutique Blu-rays, because it's something as a fan, I wanted. And, working for Troma and being in that Troma building, and then looking in the archives full of digibetas, beta cams, mini DVs, film negatives, you name it. So many assets, so many elements. And as a fan, I was like, I would love to like watch all this stuff. So
you're like, it's all here,
right,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I was like, okay, how do I do this? So I guess I was like, I knew I had to move into distribution for, if I want to make any more films, I need to move into a different part of the business. And I was like, because the first DVD I ever got, my mom imported me Tromeo and Juliet from Troma.com in 97 before I even got a DVD player. Okay. I was like, I love Tromeo and Juliet so much. So like, I had this. It's an amazing movie. Yeah. And so I got the DVD player that Christmas, but there was something about the Troma DVDs, like you said, compared to a lot of other DVD releases at the time is, a lot of the Hollywood studio releases, you'd get like scene selections, trailer, cast and crew bios. With Troma, you'd get documentaries, audio commentaries. You'd have like the tit of the week, the Troma intelligence test.
I think they dominated it during DVD. Of course, with home video, with VHS, right? They, much like porn, they, they found their market. Like often underground stuff finds its market with these like novel home video releases. That's probably why they were interested in, UMD for a moment or whatever, because that had served them well. And I remember they were always so bleeding edge when it came, like, dude, you just awakened a memory that I haven't thought of in a long time, which is I bought Tromeo and Juliet online as a digital copy before there was any concept of it. The year must have been 2000, maybe 99. And I went to their website and they were like, you can buy it on home video or you can download it. It's going to take you days to download it, but you'll just have a file. There's no DRM, nothing like that. And it wasn't half bad. It wasn't like those, really low bit rate real media files or, that you try to play in Winamp, but it has some malware in it. It wasn't like that. It was like an intact, and I don't know it's fascinating. Actually, I don't know what happened to that file, but I bought, it must've been $5 or something. That's how I saw Tromeo for the first time. My film, I Need to Lose 10 Pounds in 2006, won Troma Dance. And then I was like, I would love for you guys to distribute it. That was my dream, was to get this distributed by Troma. And they picked it up for 20 years. And that was 2006. So we're coming up on, like, I guess I'll get the rights back. Not that I've always just sold it on my website. It's never been a problem. But it only ever appeared on Troma Now. And what that means is that, Troma Now is their streaming platform. And what that means is for a long time, there was no Troma Now. And for a long time, my movie was not released. And I remember I was like poking them. There was a guy named Jonathan Lees who used to work for Troma Dance, and he was trying to help me, and then he left. It's part of the problem with like Troma staff is they'll turn over, you'll lose contact with people. But I remember they were like, hey, so we've got an idea for your movie. We're not going to put it out on, in a traditional DVD release, but we're trying out this new thing. There's this new third-party service. This never went anywhere, spoilers. But they were like, people at home will print their own DVDs. That was what they were going to do. They were like, so you'll burn your own DVD. We'll put all of the cover art and everything. You submit the cover art to us, and they'll print, we'll give instructions and they can buy certain kinds of paper. And I was like, oh no, I don't want that. But I think I was like, all right, let's do it. And then it fell through anyway. But they were always trying stuff. They're like, let's put a file up online. Let's upload our whole catalog to YouTube. Let's have them print their own DVDs. But they were just finding all these ways to like get into your home. And especially during the 2000s, it really worked. I mean, that's really where they developed like a huge kind of hardcore fan base that, to this day, probably if Lloyd were to make a movie, like people would come out for free, no problem, because of like all of that goodwill that was created during that era.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, even there was a movie called Unspeakable that was, I think, the first internet movie or one of the first movies that was ever uploaded for people to download during that era. So Troma's always been like torchbearers when it comes to adapting to new technology, more so than any other studio.
For sure. I had a number of VHSs. I wish I still had them. I was told, I went to, I collect for VHS, and I went to a guy recently, and I knew he had a Toxie 2. I had a bunch of them when I was a kid, and I got rid of them all. And I was like, you don't still have that Toxie 2, do you? He's like, Troma stuff doesn't stay here. The Troma stuff, like Troma VHSs fly off the shelf. Wow. And I'm interested in, I'm also a Laserdisc collector. And I would love Romeo and Juliet on Laserdisc.
Dude,
but
does that exist?
It does exist. Yeah.
Dude, I have it on my wall. Signed by Sean Gunn.
From Gilmore Girls?
Yeah, Gilmore Girls, yes.
That's awesome. So you're like a legacy media collector in addition to...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have Laserdiscs, I have VHS. Like my Troma VHS from being a kid, like 10 years old, 11 years old, I still have all those VHS tapes just because they mean so much to me. And not just that, I mean, CDs, vinyl, you name it. I just love physical media.
Yeah, and physical media, how it's going, like the market's becoming more niche and more niche. But with the streaming, it's just it's so weird because it's so like transient. Like you're watching something, you don't even know which version you're watching. You don't know like what they're editing from it. Like with Netflix, like they edit scenes from shows that you just watched a week ago. They're like, oh, there was a mistake, and they edit it out. Even like they released they had Passion of the Christ on there, and people were pissed because they cut off the quote in the beginning. And it's like, because people expect their movies to be a certain thing. So that's why I think that it's really awesome to put all this time into a Blu-ray, because it becomes real. And I think that's why people get pissed off when they do these really shitty 4K restorations where they're removing grain, they're making everyone look like plastic, because the people who care about physical media know that this is going to be the version for the next decade.
There's this like concept of we want the version. We want the definitive version. And like Blu-ray has occupied that. I remember thinking like, I was still making independent films when streaming had become more popular. And I remember being like, I'm still putting it out on Blu-ray, because if I didn't put it out on Blu-ray, it's not a real movie, right? Like it means it never really got made, right? It's something that could just kind of go poof. Like there is something about like pressing it, or at least having 50 copies or something. Something is just like, it was a movie. It was real. Like when humans roved the earth, this movie got made at some point.
Yeah. And it's also being true to what that movie like is for most people. Like the version of, Alien that I want, it has film grain. Like it has that in it, like I don't want that removed. And so I think that's, I'm sure as distributing this, you're thinking about that. What would fans who like this movie, what kind of version am I going to be giving them that is going to be sitting on their shelves for decades?
For sure.
Yeah.
And, for me, with Troma, when I was licensing these titles, especially Cannibal, they sent me a whole list of their inventory. And what I did was I marked down every single beta tape, every single digi-beta tape that had anything to do with Cannibal, Toxie, or Kabuki Man. And I got them shipped all the way to the UK. And then I went to a place called ITV Archive. ITV is it's a British channel, but they digitize a lot of legacy media. So all the digi-beta tapes, all the Betacam tapes. I even got flown over the 35mm print of Cannibal that Vinegar Syndrome used. So we had that scanned, because with Cannibal, because the elements were lost, from what I've been told, that the only thing that really exists is the Betacam master tapes. However, I wanted to experiment. I wanted to see if, well, will 35mm print look good blown up in 4K? Would, so we used many different sources. And when we found, I guess, the Betacam master, my post-house guy called Mark Brindle, who works at Maniac Films, me and him remastered it frame by frame. So I had like a huge like Excel spreadsheet, put in the time code saying, okay, I see some red noise right now in Trey's neckerchief or the Indian's neck beads, because the Betacam has baked-in video noise.
Yes.
You don't want to lose the information, so you capture the Betacam at the highest possible resolution, and then you do it frame by frame. But it's mainly the video noise, because a lot of these Betacam masters, they were really created for old CRT TVs, right, with a lamp on in the back. So when you watch a lot of older, like, DVDs, VHSs on modern day TV screens, they don't come across as well. It's always best to watch them on a CRT, unless you've got a really good upscaler. However, when there's no information on, let's say, a DVD, what are you actually upscaling? Because there's only so far you can go. So, we wanted to, because obviously we couldn't scan the negatives because they supposedly got lost in Matt Stone's parents', garage like many, many moons ago. But also, they had tragic, but also they never edited the movie on film. They actually edited the movie on videotape.
So if you found it, you'd be editing it, you'd be digitizing film, re-editing, and then printing back the film or something like that, right?
Yeah, I'd be doing that. I'd be doing that right now if I had to fucking put the whole thing together. So,
right.
To be fair though, some films like Cannibal, they're worth the effort. So with the remastering process, it took around, I'd say, 8 or 9 months back and forth, and we went through maybe 30 different versions of the film. So I had to QC it all the time, give it to friends, because sometimes your eyes can play tricks on you when you see the same things again and again. And we try to get it to a point where we showed it to the director of photography, Robert Muratari, because we wanted his approval, but also we wanted to reclaim the Technicolor look. So if you've seen our version or any previous Troma version, you'll see that the colors are like, they're like hyper reality colors.
They edited digitally in 1993. They did, Ian Harden edited digitally on an Avid. Kind of interesting, right? They went to tape, obviously. So they did, so it went to the lab. It then goes to tape, and he starts editing digitally. And then probably at that time, they're like, wow, did you know that you can bump the greens and all this stuff in the program? So the greens are outrageous and the pinks are outrageous. And the movie, my whole life, I've known it to be a grotesquely color corrected movie in a way that I find charming. So I think that's actually like a valid question for film preservation, is like, do you preserve the bizarre color choices?
You've probably noticed it, Frankie, but do you notice in Jason McHugh's beard, it goes green when they enter the Indian camp?
Oh, yeah. There's like some like fraying.
Yeah, no, seriously, there's like green, and that's always been in every single version.
You got it out?
Oh no, we kept it, dude. We want to keep it.
We rotoscoped the green back in,
dude. Because that's another thing when it comes to remastering. It's like, you don't want to make it something it's not. And I think a lot of studios, they just think, oh, let's just put it in Topaz, spit it out, and put it on disc.
Is that what they're doing, Liam? Are they just going in, he mentioned Topaz, that's this like AI upscaler. Is that what some of these boutique Blu-rays are doing? They're like, we just want to get it to, we have it in 720, and we want to get it to 4K.
I don't think the boutiques are doing it. I don't think they are. Yeah. I bet Jaws 3 and 4, I don't know if you guys have seen the, is it Universal released those on Blu-ray?
Well, Universal seems famous for this horse shit.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So when you watch it, there's no denying that there's some topazzery going on. Right.
Or I saw like somebody had a clip of, they upscaled all of I Love Lucy, and there's like it interprets the out of focus person in the background as like just some other fucking human being or something.
It's scary, man. It really is. But also, it's like, well, what are we trying to do here? Because to me, you should preserve it as much as you can. And my whole idea of Cannibal is just so it looked good on a bigger screen. That's ideally what I just wanted to replicate, because there's no way you can fake HD with this thing. So, so we copied over so many beta tapes, the 35mm print, you name it. And then we spoke to Jason. He says, use the beta master. So we did that. And then, I found all these like uncut tapes in the Troma basement, that said Trey interview 2006 part 1, and then Matt Stone interview. And I'm thinking, are these the interviews on the 13th anniversary DVD that I wish were longer? Okay, everyone talks about the sound on the Refused Films release. It's like, dude, forget about the sound, forget about the film, forget about the drunken commentary. It's all about those uncut interviews.
I think that bumps your release like way, way high. Like where, now you have archive quality special features, because what happens across 30 years of releases is that these special features become as big a part of the movie experience as anything else. And now, to me, that's treasure. And holy shit, if somebody could just do Time Warped, if somebody could find master versions of Time Warped, I would come and then I would die and everything would be fine.
Time Warp has the best. That's the most hilarious opening title song ever.
You like them more than your grandparents?
Folks who are on Time Warp are your favorite in the world. They're your favorite people. You like them more than your grandparents.
But what I wanted to know was, here's my theory, and then you tell me what really happened in the lab. Okay, so we know that there's a color-corrected version of the movie. I believe that you got a hold of the Betacam SP master of the final to broadcast, color-corrected, ready-to-go version of the movie, and you upscaled that. And I believe that Vinegar Syndrome got a hold of a digi-beta that was in some kind of like early version pre-color correction or something that was more like directly from the film. And that was their tape transfer. Do I have that? Because they mentioned they got a digi-beta. I think you said Betacam SP. What do I have wrong there?
So, we did have digibetas. We have Betacam SP. I believe we used the Betacam SP because that was the earliest one. However, there was no video master of Cannibal that looked decent. I mean, all of them had the video noise, and that's a lot to do with the saturation and the color when they actually did it, right? So I haven't seen Vinegar Syndrome's video transfer. I've not seen the video transfer. I've only seen because I have the same 4K scan, because we did scan the same print. And the reason why that's darker is obviously it's a film print, and there was only ever one, and it was used many times. Jason McHugh paid for the print. In fact, Troma wouldn't pay for it because back then, you couldn't just take like a videotape or a DVD to a cinema to screen the film, because Jason wanted to do this kind of like roadshow, a bit like Rocky Horror Picture Show, And this was like early 2000s, where South Park was still, really at its mainstream peak, right? So, when we first got the digibetas and I've viewed everything, it all looks very bad, and it does take a long time to frame by frame clean this up, all the video noise and everything. So I don't know. I mean, if it is a digibeta, it could be a generational issue, because that can happen as well, generational loss.
Curious, just because it's clear that their tape transfer looks untouched by Ian's chaotic color correction.
Right.
And then, and that's why I think it's a cool kind of like academically interesting version of the movie where you're like, oh, I think this is before they went crazy with the color correction. Now that makes it, I think, an invalid version of the movie, but it's interesting to see. It looks a little bit more like it came directly from the film, like from the raw. And then it looks to me like the 35 mil scan is from that tape, not from a color corrected tape. Yeah.
Potentially. So with the 35 millimeter film, they just took the Troma master tape and just projected it. Well, just scanned it to film 35 millimeter print as a touring print, and that'll always darken the image, because I have seen on a few comments where people are like, why does the Refused Films version look like this, and then why does Vinegar Syndrome version look more from what I've read, neutral, a bit more kind of
balanced. Yeah.
I don't know. All I can say is, I wanted to replicate exactly how it's always looked to me.
Yours looks like the movie. Yeah. Yours looks like Cannibal the Musical. That's what fucking Cannibal the Musical looks like. Yeah, what they have is like an interesting preservation of Cannibal. Yeah.
Of course, no, without a doubt. And I'll be honest, when I first said that there was that they were going down that route, I was surprised, just because I know what the print looks like. And look, it looks like exactly what it is, but at the same time, it's not the film that I've seen broadcast on TV, on numerous VHSs. And
it was a weird choice. It's like why not it'd be okay if maybe those are something like on a second disc or something like that, an alternative, but not have the color corrected version of the movie, I thought was a really curious choice. As a collector, it made it easier for me because I was like, cool, I'll buy both. And then I'll basically have a 3-disc version of the movie, and I'll get their VHS too. So I was like I kind of regard the release as like, it would be best to just buy yours and theirs if you're a Cannibal fan and you like boutique Blu-ray. Then you just got because they have a nice documentary on there and stuff.
I have seen the documentary. It's brilliant. And I've said since day one that, there's enough room at the table for as many boutique Blu-ray labels, and we're all doing something different, and they're all excellent. And I'm a huge, like yourself, and we're all huge fans of film, and we want to. And if I didn't love Troma, I wouldn't have the time, energy, or anything to go through. But because I'm very familiar with the footage, after collecting all the DVDs for many years, I was like, I would love just to put as Troma's Edge TV, Troma Basement, all these like little Troma clip shows and everything on these discs, just to make them feel like the DVDs of the early 2000s. Now, because I'm new to this whole game, I didn't realize there was it felt very territorial online when it came to our releases of Cannibal.
Yeah.
And it was I felt like, because both myself and Vinegar Syndrome knew of both of our releases, because they reached out to me because they thought that I found the negative, and I'm like, no, man, we don't have the negative. But if we did, obviously you've got every right to use it, because you've licensed it from Troma for North America, and I've licensed it for the United Kingdom. So when we announced in September, and then I believe Vinegar Syndrome were going to originally really announce theirs in November. But they decided to announce theirs like a few hours after we made our grand announcement we've been working up to. And there was a few things behind the scenes that were happening that and I'm brand new to this game. I'm brand new to the distribution game, and it just I get it's business 110%. But at the same time, I'm working outside of a spare bedroom in bumfuck Yorkshire, UK. No one knows where it is. And, you guys have got brick and mortar stores. And
do they really? Vinegar Syndrome has brick and mortar stores?
They have 3.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So it was kind of like you were Tweak Brothers Coffee.
That smooth aroma and mild taste is what makes Tweak coffee so very special. Special, like an Arizona sunrise or a juniper wet with dew.
What's the Starbucks parody? I don't remember, but
I'm John Poster from the Harbucks Coffee Corporation.
make sure it's really nice and flashy now.
Now make sure that shine is really bright and flashy now.
Your coffee tastes like 3-day-old moldy diarrhea. Anyway, yeah, it's a bummer that when you're doing a labor of love, and I do want to take a second and really give you your due, because you didn't have to do this. And the fact that you got off your ass, that one of us fans, you got off your ass and preserved the film in a way that probably that's the way that Cannibal the Musical will now be remembered and preserved. Like a movie that, so way over here in North America, that's one of the most important movies to me in the world. And because you put that together, it gets to live on, man, outside of some VHSs and some rotting DVDs. So I'm extremely appreciative of it. And I totally hear you about I love, and something I really miss is a DVD authored and produced with personality. And, and that's one of the things that was a staple of those early Cannibal DVDs was there was some intern or something making animated menus and putting some care into it and making little jokes and whatever. And this has that personality, and it's not as though Lloyd came along or somebody and was put this on, and push this idea. You were no, I as a fan, I know about Troma Edge TV. As a fan, you know what? The Screen Edge version should go on our disc. And I, by the way, totally agree. I love your choice, Liam. In addition to the nicely rotoscoped up-resed version of the movie, he also put on that original VHS UK Screen Edge version, so you can see that in its entire, the way that a lot of people, because the VHS that released here, it was that VHS. It didn't have the Screen Edge logo on it by the time Troma put it out, but it's the same cut. It's got "Don't Be Stupid" in it, and it's got slightly longer Polly Pry says, "This is a story that could make my career." They cut that out in future versions, but it's slightly early. And is it true? Do you am I right to have heard that that Les Claypool found the movie in the UK, and that was sort of the start of the South Park relationship?
That's right. Yeah. When I met Jason McHugh in 2022, South Park were doing the 25th anniversary show in Colorado. I think it was Boulder, CU Boulder. Jason McHugh was there, Dian Bachar, Toddy Walters, Robert Muratori. And, they screened Cannibal. And afterwards, getting everything signed. And I gave him my Alfred Packer VHS from Screen Edge. And he's like, oh, wow. And he tells me the story about Les Claypool picking it up sometime in the UK. So it's so weird, like how, the worlds kind of collide sometimes.
In my documentary, a couple of times I said, I really wish they had put on Time Warped. I wish they had put on this short where Trey was dressed as Elvis. I wish they had put on maybe Your Studio and You. They're like Universal. And I figured, I was like, well, the rights are probably challenging, right? And that's the reason they didn't do it. But some of that stuff is not tied up in rights. There was another reason why it didn't make it on the disc. Are you able to talk about that at all?
With Troma and Trey and Matt, Michael has always communicated with Jason McHugh. Jason McHugh always communicates with Trey and Matt. So we had to submit a list of everything we wanted to go on the disc. Now, I contacted Jerry Arison at the CU Boulder Film School, and he sent us all the original short films. We had everything. We had the on the YouTube video you did, Frankie, where they're in LA and they're talking and talking about how Trey Parker's going to go for these meetings. I wanted to put that on there. We wanted the short films on there. We wanted everything. However, they kind of vetoed a lot of things. Another thing we wanted on there was the DVD performance at Lap Dance. We wanted to put that on there, and
I have that DVD.
Dude, it's a great DVD. It's got DVD on there.
Can you give us a quick something? Just a couple notes?
No, because it's gone.
It's gone.
It out.
He's not only gorgeous, he can sing.
That's right.
Tony, watch out. Are you single?
Sort of.
I think Troma's in it for like a few seconds, right? Did they do some Troma dance? Like, that's a fucking great DVD.
You're with Troma Films. We're super excited. Tell us a little bit about Troma.
Troma is the anti-studio, anti-elite, anti-Hollywood,
Anti coming from the Latin meaning against.
We were able to use elements of the short films in our interview segments. So, we weren't allowed to show them as whole, but we could show them in clips. But the one main thing we really wanted was Shatterproof. Shatterproof was like, we begged for Shatterproof. And there was just no way. I mean, obviously it's out there on YouTube for people to see,
Thank God.
But what's great about going back and forth with Jason about what we wanted is they were able to find a work print of Cannibal. I think it was at South Park Studios, and we were able to Matt and Trey approved the deleted scenes that we were able to put on the disc, which were some deleted scenes that I've never seen before. So I was like, in the final light, this is gold.
They came from that guy, that Matt with 3 T's, that guy.
That's right, yeah. He was doing the Orgasmo DVD back in the day as well. That's how I kind of knew about him.
Hey, I'm Matt Potter.
Yeah, he was kind of like a go-between for Trey and Matt back in the day. I remember Kevin Smith on the... we're getting really nerdy. Kevin Smith on the commentary of Orgasmo talked about how he had heard from a guy named Matt with 3 T's that Matt Stone didn't like him because Clerks outperformed Cannibal or something.
I get an email from this dude, Matt, with 3 T's. Says he's working at this thing called Crap TV. He was explaining in his email that he works with Trey and Matt. He says, and guess what, man? Those dudes hate your guts. When Clerks was on the festival circuit, Trey and Matt had this movie, Cannibal the Musical, that was also on the festival circuit. And Clerks was getting a lot of attention and whatnot, and I guess Cannibal the Musical wasn't getting any attention. So they finally got around to seeing Clerks after hearing so much about it, and they hated it. This is the movie that's getting that got all the hype, and our movie didn't. Fuck him. Fuck Kevin Smith and Clerks.
How scary is it working with Kevin Smith?
Is Jason there?
Yeah. Hey, dude, I don't know what he's talking about.
Who's Kevin Smith?
I don't know.
How did we work with him?
Never.
It was great working with Kevin.
This Matt with 3 T's guy was somehow I don't know if he was like a Jason friend or that quick interview of Dian on the set of, I think, Team America, right? Wherever that is. That Matt with, one of the Matt with 3 teeth. He's standing in the background, this guy.
Well, Matt, thank you very much for, thanks to this man right here, that all this has happened. Mr. Matt Potter.
You got Dian Bachar. That's an extra bonus.
But I think he's responsible for that deleted scenes reel that you guys were able to.
Definitely. He put it together for us and everything. Yeah, no. So thanks to him, we were
never seen those before. Like Alfred on the stand, telling and then I dressed up like Abe Lincoln and those guys. I've never seen that before.
So good.
Yeah.
That's my favorite out of all those deleted scenes.
I also love the recurring joke of like, you guys, I can't cook. You guys, I don't really speak Indian. Everybody's just confessing for some reason.
You guys know that friend of mine? He didn't really make a gazillion dollars. You guys, I can't cook. I can't speak Indian.
Is there anything that you wanted to put on the Blu-ray but you couldn't find a source for? Like, because like there's things like I remember, and for the life of me, I can't find them even on the internet. I don't know if there's anything that came up where you're like, oh, I wish I had a source for this.
Yeah, we were able to find a lot of I found like this unaired South Park promo that Troma edited together. They actually recorded South Park from Comedy Central and cut up the scenes and were like, you want money, you want revenue, South Park's the biggest thing. Buy Cannibal the Musical right now on VHS. And it was, I'm like, you guys won't be able to even release this, but the balls of putting something like that together to, it's great marketing, but Troma is known for that. When it comes to I think we're able to get, everything that I knew that existed, but also what we were allowed to have on there as well. That's another thing. But the Troma stuff was like A-OK. That was kind of all pre-approved. But anything else, like the Shatterproof, etc., would need to get approved.
Because Trey doesn't want to put it on the disc. Because I think that the logic was, or what I heard Jason say was, it was like, well, at the end of the day, that song just does not fit with what was ultimately the vision of the movie, which was they should all be these pioneer songs. They should all be in that Oklahoma style. And this is suddenly a techno song or something from the 90s.
Lots of people have been asking, like, what happened to that scene? Why didn't you bring it back? Why don't you release it in the bonus material? Trey's never wanted to release that because Shatterproof is like a techno song. It's like this, and it doesn't really fit with the Americana musical vibe. So he still kind of kept that buried.
But I do love it. And
so good.
It's impressive that they were able to, because my understanding is that they shot that over the course of 14 hours or something. And it was a big, difficult, tiring shoot. And they were most of the footage from Shatterproof is kind of repurposed into the sort of action scene that ends up in the final film.
Oh yeah, that whole scene when he's fighting Frankie it's amazing how much they were able to use. But just the song itself, the song is really interesting. Trey doesn't like the song, but Troma's trailer for Cannibal the Musical is just the original fake trailer that the guys made in college, and they released that, and then they released a version with some scenes from the film, but Shatterproof's on every single version of that trailer.
I'm shatterproof. There's nothing you can show me. I'm still sitting at home, so you all can blow me. Know what I'm saying? It's true. It's true. After what I've been through.
It's hilarious, but also, it's arguably, if anyone wants to watch Shatterproof, we've all got YouTube. More people are going to see it on YouTube than they would on,
But are you telling me you have a high quality version of Shatterproof that you can't share with the world?
I don't, I'm sorry. No. If you see a really crappy Topaz version, blame Refuse Films.
Vinegar Syndrome did that shit.
No, man, no. Vinegar Syndrome scan stuff. Those guys actually do they've got their own scanner, I think. So that and hell, I've owned Vinegar Syndrome releases in the past. So
yeah, well, like you said, there's and I think the future of Blu-ray is in boutique Blu-ray for obviously, right? It's become a collector's preservationist medium. Probably it won't be in Target forever or but for as long as there are online boutique Blu-ray stores. So we know that you put out Toxie and you put out Sergeant Kabuki Man. You've been able to kind of market the three of them together as the Troma Archive collection. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. Series 1. That's correct. And, Toxie was probably the hardest disc to do because, nearly everything that's out there for Toxie is already out there. And Toxie is also, I probably own that 12 times over different media formats. So how'd you get people to, buy it again? So Vinegar Syndrome, they scanned the 4K, for the 4K UHD that Troma put out. Vinegar Syndrome did the scans for that. So, I was able to use a HD version of the 4K scan on the disc. Or I don't know if people know this, but like when Lloyd shot those films, those earlier films, he shot it with the 4:3 in mind. So when you see a lot of the widescreen Troma films, you'll see a lot of cropping. So when you watch The Toxic Avenger, if you the truck, there's a sign that says hazardous waste. It's actually cropped in the widescreen version because the full screen is how he originally intended it. I think pre-Poltergeist, maybe, that he always intended that.
We have to frame it for fucking CRTs or whatever, because he knew that cable and home video is where he was gonna, after the theater.
And it's really funny because when I read Lloyd's first book, All I Need to Know About Filmmaking I Learned from The Toxic Avenger, he mentioned that fans would write in to ask why his films weren't in widescreen. And I remember when Troma released, I think it was the 21st anniversary of The Toxic Avenger in I think it was 2005, and they called it the Tromorphic version, and all they did was they just like, But what's even great is Lloyd recorded a whole new commentary, right? And Gabe Freedman, who was the editor at Troma, the main editing guy.
Yep. I got to meet him a few times. Yep.
Hello, Gabe. What's Frankie think?
He's a great guy. Love Gabe, love that era of Troma. But so he plays the character of like this Troma fanboy on the commentary, saying, "Oh, Mr. Kaufman,
Why is this the first Troma feature in widescreen? Why did it take so long?"
When we film movies, you get as much wide as you get in widescreen, but we give you additional real estate. We give you the top and the bottom. So the stuff you're seeing widescreen on a typical movie, they put the mat in because they put microphones in that area. Whereas we keep our mics out of the full screen. You can see more if you see more in the foreground and more in the background. And you can see more butts if you happen to have butts in the... Sorry, Leonard, you must continue.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, look, I would rather see movies in how they were originally intended, or both versions, which is why on my release, I also I had the Digibeta Master of the Toxic Avenger DVD, the 1998 version. So I put that on there for archival purposes, but also so you can see the full screen. And then also the Japanese cut, which has always looked dreadful. Even on the Troma DVD, it looked really bad. I think that was also zoomed in as well. So I could not find any video master for the Japanese version. So I had to order a Swedish DVD that had like a really clean video master on it, full screen, and it looked good. So we put that on there. So, there's certain elements that aren't available. So, for me, the Troma Archive, the whole idea of it is just to put like the, I guess, I don't know, standout versions of the movie.
Like, that's the reason to buy a Refused Films release instead of, like, if you already own, like, the Troma release of Toxie on Blu-ray, the reason to also get the Refused Film is because of all this extra stuff.
You may already own Sergeant Kabuki Man NYPD on VHS, DVD, and Blu-ray, but Refused Films' Troma Archive Collection release of Sergeant Kabuki Man NYPD comes with not one, not two, but 3 versions of the movie.
Kabuki Man, he has his own TV show, Kabuki Man's Cocktail Corner, and then Kabuki Man in Cannes, like, Doug Sakmann, who played, Kabuki Man for the past 25 years. R.I.P. Doug Sakmann. There's a tribute for to Doug on the disc. It was very emotional playing it together because a lot of those Kabuki Man clips in the archives of Troma is Doug portraying that character, and he's arguably, in my opinion, the best to play Kabuki Man. I mean, anyone out there that wants to check out Doug in All the Love You Can, which is probably one of my favorite Troma documentaries. That in itself, the star of the show of that is Doug Sakmann.
I'm outside the Troma office. See, I have this badge that says I can get anywhere. VIP access. I shouldn't even need a pass to get in my house. Look at me. Am I not recognizable?
When I heard that he passed last year, I was like, oh my, I haven't thought about All the Love You Can since like 2002. But this was a DVD, EJ, that, Troma used to go to the Cannes Film Festival, right? Especially like, I would say, 80s, 90s or whatever, they would always go. And they always, because a lot of times they don't have like formal screenings or anything. They just go there and make a marketing spectacle of themselves. They would dress up as the stupid characters. And of course, Troma always has a traveling caravan of drunken, like clowns.
We're fucking stuck.
So my God, leaned on the stop button.
Holy shit.
Press the emergency. That's it. I'm claustrophobic.
I'm suffocating.
Doug was like an alpha drunken clown. And he was, he's one of these type of guys. He had toxic vendor tattoos all over his body. And he would get arrested for Troma. It was like one of that. And so they put together a big documentary about that year that they all went out there, and it's mostly about Doug's antics. And poor guy passed last year, unfortunately.
Great guy, I was in Cannes with Doug in 2013 because Occupy Cannes is finally coming out. I've actually seen the documentary. So we shot a sequel to All Love You Can. So we all went over in 2013 to promote the release of Return to Nuke 'Em High. So that was crazy. And Doug, there's some, crazy times with Doug. But to be honest with you, when I first met Doug on the set of Return to Nuke 'Em High. And when I met him, I was like, this is the guy from All the Love You Can. This is the guy, from Troma's Edge TV. This is Punk Rock Holocaust, Doug Sakmann, And it was like, I don't know, it was like I was meeting a hero of mine. And, he soon became a friend. And, I worked with him on #Shakespeare's Shitstorm. So he's definitely missed. He's definitely missed. I mean, he's like, up there with like the Troma legends when it comes to like Troma alumni legends.
Let's name them. Let's name the Troma alumni legends. We have Doug Sakmann. We have Gabe Freedman.
We have Trent Haaga.
So you're also good friends with him.
We were attached to direct a movie together called Gorehound, which we're still trying to raise financing for, which is proving very hard. But so I've been speaking to Trent online since I was in high school, which sounds really weird to say, but I used to watch him on Troma's Edge TV, and I used to always email him about script writing advice, and he would always email back, which I thought was really cool. So me and Trent always kept in touch over the years, and I started making movies, and in 2022 he hit me up on Twitter, says, "Yo man, I'm going to finally come to the UK. Let's hang out." Because we had both films premiering at Fright Fest. Now, Fright Fest in Leicester Square, London, is like the biggest European genre festival. Shaun of the Dead had its world premiere. There are all these, it's it's in the middle of Leicester Square. It's a great event. So Trent wrote a film called Hazard, and I wrote and directed Eating Miss Campbell. So we just, hit it off, and we've become really close friends.
And a lot of these guys sort of were a proxy for the fans, because so often, like some of your experiences you're describing, it starts with fandom, and then it's like, hey, I'd like to get involved. And then before you know it, you run the joint for a few years. And then, Trent was, he was one of the stars of Terror Firmer, which, by the way, Terror Firmer, I think, underrated Troma film. I actually, it's about the making of a Troma film. Lloyd plays a blind director, and, there's a Farts of Darkness. There's one of the for me that was like the first of the
That's right.
of the chaotic, everybody's screaming at one another Troma documentaries. Which, like, years later, I did a podcast clip on it. I was like, years later, I was like, this is no way to make a fucking movie. Screaming at one another.
Stupidity, incompetence, maybe that's better. Stupidity, sloth.
Yeah, I mean, guys, it's either retardedness or it's just sloth or whatever it is.
Why didn't you notice there's no fucking... Why did you not notice it's not there?
If you're really having a heart attack, I'll take it seriously. Otherwise, fuck you.
It's unbelievable, the stupidity on this production. And I'm sorry to say it, but that's why I'm nice. Because, I've been nice. People think I've been nicer on this production. It's not that I'm nicer. It's that the people are so stupid, I can't get angry with them. I cannot get angry. I can get angry with someone who is smart and lazy. I can't get angry with stupid people. There's nothing I can do about it. That's why this production is different from other Troma movies where people are just lazy or evil. These people are wonderful, and most of them are terrific, but there are a few who are really, really fucking stupid.
I was enamored by it. That was one of those, like, filmmaking, and to this day, like, nothing makes me stop, sit down, and pay complete attention quite like making of. I that show Project Greenlight, even though it was sensationalized, I really enjoy the dysfunction and the just the complexity of filmmaking. It's because I've experienced it. It's something that like I want to. I can't really get enough of.
Tell him to fucking cut the plow. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing it. Peter's not doing it. The camera team just dropped off.
Okay. Did you drive this car here? Yeah, I drove it here. Well, we're gonna need. I recorded that.
Well, there's Adam Janke,
of course, who co-wrote Make Your Own Damn Movie.
As did Trent.
Have we said James Gunn yet? Have we said James Gunn?
There's this guy named James Gunn.
Yeah, you may have heard of him.
I've told the story a million times, but you might get a kick out of it. I made a movie. My second feature film was called Abo the Hue Monkey. It was about a half man, half ape. And it screened at Troma Dance in 2008. And then he made a movie called Human Z starring Sean Gunn right around the same time. And the trailer went up and it wasn't like, first of all, James Gunn was not a household name. And he was making it for Xbox. Okay. Xbox was like looking for young filmmakers who might be interested in making things for them. And so he made it for Xbox. And I remember when the trailer went up, a critical mass of people were like, hey, like Troma Dance just screened a movie about this. You copied Frankie Frayne. That's what, and it was enough that that James Gunn DM'd me on YouTube because YouTube had a messenger at that time. And he was like, just so you know, I didn't, I don't know you. And he tried to spare his good name. And I was like, dude, of course not. And by the way, I've been following you since Tromeo and I've read the book. I read All I Need to Know About Filmmaking. And I was like, I would just love if you would watch my movie. Is that something? And he was like, no, for plausible deniability reasons, I shouldn't watch your movie. But yeah, that was I had a brief interaction with James Gunn that was like slightly controversial. Yeah.
No, James Gunn is definitely in that list. Caleb Emerson? Caleb went on to be the first AD on Poultrygeist, and he was in Citizen Coxie on Poultrygeist, and he's in Lloyd's new film, The Power of Positive Murder, that was shot last summer. He made Dayu Zombie Bastards that we're putting out on Blu-ray later on in the year. Oops.
So you're doing way more. You're going to do more Troma releases.
Oh, yeah. So I'm currently working on Series 2 right now.
Do we get a sneak peek at what they're going to be, or is it not ready?
Do you want to take a guess?
I'm thinking that maybe the obvious thing to do would be like Troma's War, and I don't know, Citizen Toxie or Terra Firma or something like Lloyd movies. And probably it would be Tromeo if you could, but maybe it's hard to do Tromeo. I don't know. I'm gonna think that you want to do Troma releases that aren't necessarily like top of mind, like maybe Surf Nazis Must Die, maybe Bloodsucking Freaks. All right, ready?
Okay.
Tromeo, the Stendhal Syndrome. I'm going to go with that. Surf Nazis Must Die and Bloodsucking Freaks. Let's hear it.
Okay, no, it's neither of them. But also, I don't want to compete with Vinegar Syndrome. That's another thing. I don't want to be in the same position. And, they might be releasing some of those titles.
So what'd you go for? Or can you not tell us?
I can't say no. I'd love to, but it's one of these things on where it's like, what if I say this and then another boutique label's like, oh, hang on a minute, we got the license to.
I know you've gotten cannibalized before.
Right. Totally, man.
Hopefully it didn't eat into sales or anything that happened. Cannibal the Musical is a known film, but it's not the most known film. But something I found kind of interesting when I put up the documentary, first of all, like almost every comment was from somebody who had an attachment or a relationship to the movie. So that's what I love about underground films or about like independent films is it might not be a household film, but everybody who loves it fucking loves it. They all had a story that was very similar to mine. I know your Toxie 2 story is pretty darn similar, where it's like, you never seen anything like that before, and it kind of unlocks this entire and I can make my own.
That's another thing with like Cannibal and just Troma as well. It's like, well, if these guys can do it on such a small budget, then maybe I can, because we're all used to watching studio movies, obviously, and I love studio movies, I love Hollywood movies, I love all kinds of movies. But I remember seeing like a lot of the behind the scenes on TV and stuff on the movie channel over here in the UK, and everyone would be like patting themselves on the back. Oh wait, it was great to work with this guy. Then you watch the Troma documentary, and to be honest with you, watching the Troma documentary, it prepared me at least before I flew over to Return to Nuke High, because I knew that when I promised myself ever since I was like 15, 16, that if Lloyd ever like makes another movie, if I'm like, of age, I can like fly over there on my own and shit, I would do it. So when Return to Nuke High came up, I didn't know anyone over there. I emailed Troma. The guy called Alex Gordon got in contact with me. And I put myself on a plane, and I've been sober now for alcohol free for a long, long time, but I quit drinking, and I'm like, I want to focus on filmmaking. I want to work on the Troma film. So when I flew out there, I was very nervous. I've never flown by myself before. I had a very sheltered childhood. But being there, dude, on Return to Nuke High, I met Justin Martell, Vito Trigo, a lot of these, friends that I collaborate with today. I mean, both Vito and Justin are in Eating Miss Campbell, my movie. To me, if I didn't fly over to do Return to Nuke High, we probably wouldn't be speaking right now, because I feel like me going out there and also myself making my own Troma films, it gave Michael Hayes enough kind of, I guess, confidence to trust me with distributing Troma movies in the UK, which, again, I never thought, 11-year-old Liam would never think that, one day you're going to be, your job is going to be working for releasing Troma films. And also, what a great day job watching the digibetas back every day just to see. I mean, I found a digibeta with raw fucking dailies from Tromeo and Juliet, which I've never seen before. Yeah, now I'm not releasing Tromeo and Juliet. Someone else might be releasing Tromeo and Juliet.
Somebody ought to.
I've heard that there might be a version of Tromeo and Juliet coming out, but it's definitely not Refused Films, but it's definitely a label everyone's heard of. But I've heard, and I hope it's great, because Tromeo's my favorite movie. However, do you own Tromeo on Blu-ray, Frankie?
I do.
So do you notice it's the 4:3?
Yeah, it's 4:3. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's because James Gunn probably made sure of that. James has always said he's always hated the Video Master.
Welcome to the Laserdisc version of Tromeo and Juliet. This time, Tromeo and Juliet has been lovingly remastered and refurbished at the request of our fans so that it can be viewed in the original theatrical aspect ratio, the 185:1 aspect ratio.
I love that there's this whole era of films that had to be shot as though widescreen was invalid.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like they're scanning a lot of these TV shows that was shot on film to HD. But the problem is that the having a widescreen, right, exactly. If you see stands in the background, you see people in the background, and to me, it just breaks that illusion. And for me, there's a difference between TV and film. And to me, I love Roseanne, for example, and I've heard they've recently upscaled Roseanne with Topaz, and it's like, why does anyone want that? I'll be honest with you, even though I run a Blu-ray label, guys, if I want to watch a Troma film, I don't know if I should be saying, but if I want to watch a Troma film, I watch them on DVD, because guess what, man? Because to me, that is exactly how I discovered the majority of their catalog. Yeah. And not just that. I mean, I think if you're talking about Troma films, we're talking about picture quality and sound and all these things. We're not taking like the right things away from Troma films. For example, when I released Toxic Avenger on Blu-ray, I used the 4K scan for the Blu-ray, and people were emailing me asking why some of the shots were, they said, like blurry or streaky, and it's because the shots are out of focus. And obviously, if it's a 4K scan, you're going to magnify that. So if something like, you've seen it with makeup and that on Toxie and other movies, to me, I like to view Blu-ray as more of a storage device. 50 gigabytes of content I can put on this disc. So I want to put everything on there. The last thing you want is to compress anything. So, I mean, so here's the thing. There was a lot of talk about the sound of Cannibal the Musical, the Refused Films release. I had to start replying to all these messages, dude, because it put me in a really dark place, because I had 3,000 discs. I had 3,000 discs come on my doorstep, and then like sending them out, and then everyone's talking about the sound, and I was like going paranoid. And I was asking people to listen. Can you listen to this? And so with a digibeta, all the audio stems come separately, audio channels. And they do that because when they send it to like Spain or France, they can create their own dub. So they've got the music and effects track, and they can take up the dialogue, vice versa, yada, yada, yada. So with the Cannibal the Musical, it came with two stereo stems, mono stems. So you got the left and you got the right, and that's called dual mono. I feel like I've said this so many times. I love telling this story. Okay, Vinegar Syndrome, arguably I've not like compared, but they have better audio because they've used uncompressed audio. Right. Now, if we were going to do that on the disc and how my post house offers it, I think we had something like 5 or 6 commentary tracks or audio tracks, maybe 6 or 7. That would be like a gigabyte each if it was got uncompressed sound. So that would eat up a lot. But also, people don't talk about that. The HD ProRes file is not like 24, 25 gigabytes. It's 140, 160. So people want to like harp on about the sound being compressed, but no one cares about the video being compressed. Do I need Dolby DTS HD on my Cannibal the Musical soundtrack? Maybe not. Maybe you do. But at the same time, I felt like a sacrifice had to be made, so we compressed the sound. But I still think it sounds better than any previous DVD release because it has more. It's more dynamic.
Let me make you feel better. Let me make sure that you sleep well at night for the rest of your life, because this is not something to feel bad about. Because I saw that originally from Dian Bachar, from Chota Boy himself. he was out there on Facebook talking smack.
Oh yeah, he's not a fan of me.
Yeah, well, fuck off. He was calling it illegal. It was like, go fuck yourself, actually. Well, because at that point, that's like straight up defamation. Yeah.
I mean, do you want to talk about the Dian Bachar stuff or?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And don't call me bitch.
I've never met somebody who got in a public feud with Dian Bachar.
Wait, before I do want to make you feel better, Liam, because I put on studio headphones. I listened to both back to back. Vinegar Syndrome got a little bit more articulation, but if I really had to listen. I had studio headphones. I work in video all day. I really had to listen.
Seriously, man, I had real bad anxiety because I've been working on this release for like the past, probably a year and a half or something. I licensed the movie originally in May 2023. So it's been a long time working on it. And, there's nothing worse than when you pay all that money to get it mass manufactured, 3,000 units. And then there's something wrong after you've QC'd it a million fucking times. You just want to blow your brains out.
Look, I've worked like a couple months on a YouTube video. There's some minor bullshit that somebody can't, that every comment is about. And I'm like, so this is why I made this. I worked all those months so that you could nitpick a small detail. Is that what I'm done? And it's, yeah. But I guess the reality is, with something like a boutique Blu-ray, like the point of it is to be like, so what's different about it? It's
right.
It's to dig those things up. I put it in my documentary just because I was doing a comprehensive deep dive and comparing every little thing, but it wasn't truly, there was no reason. So much so when I wrote it in the script that the audio was different, I was like, wait, am I even right about this? I actually had to put the waveform in there to be like, oh yeah, it was EJ is really he's the litmus test, because he has a high standards for technical proficiency, and even he was like, I don't know, it's like not that different at all, So it's interesting to hear you say it's not the mix, it's just that it was like a little bit more compressed.
That's all it is, yeah. So with Dian, I met Dian in 2022 at the South Park 25th anniversary event because they showed Cannibal the Musical and they showed Electric Apricot at the the CU older film school. So I met him, but we've been friends for years online. And, he knew of me. I knew of him. I'm a big fan of him. And, we spoke. I told him I'm a huge fan. I said, look, it'd be great to work together one day. I make films in England. It'd be great to fly you out, yada, yada. Lovely guy, So what happened then is I had a few people. Chris Lamphia also helped a lot on the disc, and he works at Troma. And he reached out to Dian Bachar and requested, because we chose Dian to be the one to do the audio commentary originally. Well, we'd love to have a commentary with Dian Bachar. And so we reached out, and he gave us his fee, which at that time I couldn't afford $1,000 to pay someone to talk about Cannibal the Musical, so I counter-offered with $500, and I felt like me counter-offering was like more of a slap in the face than me just saying no. And it's interesting because I grew up watching this guy, all of them, Jason, Trey, Matt, they were here. They are heroes of mine. So to watch Orgasmo and Basketball and loving those movies and watch them a million times and listen to the soundtrack. I mean, that Basketball soundtrack's fantastic. Real Big Fish, Goldfinger, they're fucking great.
All the sort of punk ska of that moment. Yeah.
So I got a message at 3 a.m. in the morning. It was like, okay, Dian Bachar sent you 6 messages, and I looked, and I guess he spoke to Jason, and Jason told him that I'm behind the Blu-ray refused films. And, he started calling me a slum proprietor. And he told me I need to go back to school to learn business. And essentially just being very disrespectful.
He's like, for some reason, girls don't take me seriously. And he's putting on a big dick on his head. Go back to school for business. Did he go to school for business?
It's so weird because, like I said, look, I'm sorry we couldn't come to an agreement on the commentary. I hope we can work together on something down the line, like maybe an Orgasmo Blu-ray or something, right? But then he kept messaging me after that, and then he kept messaging me more, and it became a point where I was like, is he just trying to bully me or something? I don't know. It's so weird. It's like, dude, all I want to do is put $500 in your pocket, and I only want you to speak for like 93 minutes or something. That's the only thing I want to do.
Yeah. Do we need to be fighting about this much? Yeah.
He's SAG, right? But if I was paying him for like 93 minutes or whatever, it's much more than the SAG rate and the non-union rate. So, $500 isn't a bad thing. Anyway, so then he took it online, and then he started denouncing Refused Films release, and then he was saying it was in mono, and he was just saying a lot of this fabricated stuff and saying like I'm not to be trusted and what I've done is illegal and all this bullshit really. And it's interesting because I feel like there's no way I could really defend myself because one, I don't have that platform, but two, it's also very damaging because not only do I have a company preventing me from selling to US online retailers, I've now got a star of the movie completely, just denouncing our release. So we were up against a lot. So Diabolic DVD, Orbit DVD, Grindhouse Video, these guys, online retailers based in the US, they make money and they thrive when they have international imports from all over the world. Now, imports, when it comes to media, has always been a thing. Music imports, vinyl imports, record imports. Dude, I've got so many I've probably got more Region 1 DVDs than I have Region 2 DVDs, okay? You can buy Region 1 DVDs, you can buy, like, for example, Arrow Video were originally a UK label, but you'd still be able to buy their stuff from Diabolic DVD, Grindhouse, these US retailers, because it's cheaper for you guys rather than importing it from the UK. Now, if someone wants to order directly from me, I will, to me, that's better than Diabolic DVD or anyone selling my stuff. But the great thing about stocking your releases with like US online retail is that people can get a taste of your label. So this is another flavor over here. And they don't have to spend, what is it, like maybe $11 on shipping. I forget what it is. Because it is a lot of money. But at the same time, to me, it should be, because I've bought Vinegar Syndrome stuff in the UK, right? So why can't, and I get it. And I understand it's business, but at the same time, I think they sold out of their like 5,000 hard book run, I think maybe in 24 hours. I've still got stock here to sell. So it's one of these things where it's like, I don't think personally that Vinegar Syndrome knew the strength of Cannibal the Musical. I don't think that I don't think they had a confidence in the title, and I don't think that they understood the fan base and the love for this movie. Because let's be honest, Frankie, why is it taking this long for someone to do this?
It's very curious. It is a beloved movie, but the question is by how many people? It almost felt like when I put out the doc, it almost felt like every single person who loves Cannibal the Musical contacted me. All of them. We could all just convene at a hotel or something.
Reunion. Yeah.
But that's a shame about Dian. Oh, but you know what you did do? You arranged for interviews with Toddy, with John Hegel, Jason himself. You have a bunch of really nicely shot and very interesting like content in those solo interviews.
Yeah, no, definitely, man. And that's Chris Lamphere lives in Colorado. He also produces the Talking Troma podcast with Zach Vines. Right. And so it was great that Chris was able to go out there and interview these people. I came out to LA to interview Jason. Jason came to see Eating Miss Campbell at Gardena Cinema in California. So many great people, gave up their time and they didn't want any money whatsoever, which is like really cool because so I lost my job that I was already planning on moving to distribution. So for me, I was using a lot of like my, grandma's savings and everything and, all, my inheritance and stuff. And I kind of like put it on the line for, this label. So when like the Dian thing happened and the Vinegar Syndrome thing happened, like
terrible.
It kind of disheartens you. And people. The thing is that a lot of things that happen with Vinegar Syndrome happen behind the scenes, but like my response was always in public because obviously people don't know what happened, and my only open forum is online. And I guess I should have known better to probably not like defend the label or myself, because it doesn't really matter what you say online. It's going to be misconstrued. You're going to be seen as a troublemaker.
And they have kind of a cult of personality as it is because they're a known quantity. So I saw was that people defend them as if it's their own kid or something.
Right.
Fucking Blu-ray label.
Totally. And look, I used to be like that, with Troma when I was younger. Much younger, I used to be like that. So I get it. I understand it, but at the same time, it feels like people wanted, monopolization. Like, no, we want one boutique label to release everything. And it's bullshit. Yeah. It's complete fucking bullshit, dude. Because at the end of the day, for me, it's the consumer, it's the fan, it's the person with the money that chooses. And if they want to buy both, they should be able to buy both.
Especially for a film like Cannibal that is not, there is no straightforward way to preserve that film. There's no obvious way to do it. So if 2 guys do it, they're probably going to do it differently. If 3 guys do it, they're probably all going to do it differently. So if you're a preservationist and you're a collector, you're just looking for like the best version of the movie, actually more labels is a good thing. And I think if I were, it sounds like you're doing this already, so whatever. But if I were you, I would market Refuse Films as like every release we put it out because we love these movies. And us loving these movies means, that we care about that 2006 interview with Trey Parker. And we're going to go find the source for that. And we're going to put it up uncut. And that's what you can always, when you're buying from Refuse Films, that's the sort of thing like you're going to buy from us. We're not just like borrowing from past DVD releases and tossing it on there and calling it a day and putting all of our focus on the main title. Like just as much, if not more of our focus is on those like really esoteric bits of material. Made by a fan, because he wanted to make the Blu-ray. That's, I think, the value in your company.
And also, I'm a collector myself. I think sometimes labels can feel a bit cynical and jaded with the amount of titles they put out, but not just that. It's like, I'm still promoting Eating Miss Campbell, that was released in March. I'm still promoting My Bloody Banjo, that was released in 2023. So it feels like with all of these labels, they're like, okay, here's our like May offerings. And then by June, let's forget about them. Here's some more. And then how about this? You sign up for a subscription and we'll be the tastemakers. And then we'll tell you what to have on that shelf. So then everyone has the exact same discs on the exact same shelves. You see them a lot in the, the YouTube videos, where they're reviewing the Blu-rays and everything. And I just feel like there's so many different labels out there. And to me, like, I don't believe in region locking anything. We were so like there was talk about our release being region coded, which I think is complete bullshit, because Troma DVDs were the first DVDs I ever owned that was region 0, which would play on any player, right?
They've been, like pro piracy of their own stuff for as long as I've known them.
Dude, without a doubt, but look, I understand Vinegar Syndromes from a business perspective, but I also feel like if they knew the title that they had and the following it had, I don't think they'd have anything to worry about. But also, they knew we were coming out with our release. They weren't blindsided by it. They knew it. I just don't think they knew like it was going to be a archival release in terms of we're going to try and put everything on this thing. But at the same time, I urge people, if they love Cannibal, check out both releases. That documentary, I have seen the documentary. It's excellent on the Vinegar Syndrome release.
So what's your goals with the company? How far do you want to take this thing? What, in like a couple of years, what kind of titles have you put, more Troma, probably more of your own stuff? And like, what kind of customer base are you looking for?
Currently, we've only got 5 titles. So in 2023, we released My Bloody Banjo. I had to purchase my rights back for My Bloody Banjo from the US distributor called Brain Damage Films, Maxim Media, Midnight Releasing. They operate in Arizona. They put out my movie in 2016. Troma were the only company at that time in 2016 that told me, Liam, if you can get money elsewhere, go for it. So one thing, people speak out about Troma when it comes to distribution, but I'll be honest with you, they are the only honest people that I've worked with in distribution.
They turned out to be like the greatest distributor that we could ever have for this. I mean, here we are 30 years later, and they're still around releasing this movie, and they've been great to work with over the years, and they're like the place you go to like be a young filmmaker and get your movie out there. And Troma's still alive. They've actually like been a much more honest distributor than any of the Hollywood distributors that we've dealt with. So I'm glad we were able to circle back and work with Lloyd and Michael for over 20 years.
I've not made a dime off banjo in America, so I had to like pay a few grand to buy back the rights so I can sell it in my own country, which is crazy. So I did that in 2023, and then Eating Miss Campbell's a sequel to Banjo, so that came out in 2024, and then the last 3 Troma releases came out at the back end of last year, early this year. However, from June or July, we're going to be moving to 3 releases a month. So we're prepping, like, we've got already 3 releases done. We're working on another 3 releases so we're not like chasing each other, like in terms of, oh shit, we're going to work on the next 3. We want to get a few in the, here's some we made earlier.
It sounds like, like the original thought was like, well, first of all, I'll have my own distribution outlet. So when I make movies, I'll have a place to put them.
Yeah.
And then also, in order to actually move some copies, you want it to be like somewhat recognizable, cult following, like stuff that people are actually going to buy. Do you want to eventually get to a place where you can exhibit some like indie filmmakers, people who maybe not a lot of people know about, that sort of thing, like be a platform a little bit?
110%. So the next 3 releases aren't going to be Troma releases. The next 3 releases in June or July, depending, is going to be called just Refuse Films. And this will be Refuse Film Series 1. It's going to have 3 titles. That one's a HD Blu-ray premiere. We had the negative scanned in America, New York. And then the other 2, one of them is an Australian film, which is one of the darkest films I've ever seen. And I've only seen it once, but I know I've got to QC it, So I'm not looking forward to QCing that, but it's very grim. And then the other movie is a recent film that's just played the festival circuit. So what I'm wanting to do for Refuse Films is just to put out movies that, one, haven't had a Blu-ray release yet, underground, and kind of have that like transgressive nature that my films kind of have, because my films are very much influenced by Troma. Then after Refuse Film Series 1, we're going to have the Troma Archive Series 2, which should be either July or August. So we're working on them as we speak. One of them is going to be a world, like Cannibal, a world Blu-ray premiere that's never had a HD release. So that'll be exciting to do. And then after that, I have a sub-label called Disc Rot, which is going to be putting out like kind of DIY shot on video films, but marketed as like the bootlegs, because like I used to buy pirate copies, as they called it in the UK, as a kid from like car boot sales, like yard sales, okay?
Yeah.
And like there'd be like photocopied covers of like Mrs. Doubtfire, and they'd look like shit. But there was something about the aesthetic of like the fakeness of it, really, the bootlegness of it that I thought was charming. And I want to kind of, and I'm surprised no one's replicated that. And that's why I wanted to go with Disc Rot.
So, that's a great idea. But you'd put them out on Blu-ray, but you'd sort of market them as though they were found at a yard sale or something like that.
Exactly. I'm really just wanting to be an outlet, not just for Troma stuff, but for other filmmakers. I may make another movie. I don't know. Like the distribution things really well, and you'll know Frankie making a movie is very stressful and hard, and you just want to you have a mental breakdown every single time. So. For now, distribution is just the key, but I'd love to make another Banjo film. I'm wanting to make, Banjo is the first, Eating Miss Campbell's the second, and I think I'll do the third. They've all got kind of like running characters. I kind of just stole Kevin Smith's model, for the Jersey trilogy.
Cool. Like it's sort of the little like ecosystem that, like they're not necessarily continuations of one another, but the characters kind of overlap.
And they evolve, and so I kind of do that. I stole that from Kevin Smith 100%.
Oh, that's great.
Thank you. But also, Troma's in my blood. Troma's the reason why I wanted to make films. Troma's the reason why I wanted a DVD player. Troma's the reason why I'm a director. And Troma's the reason why I'm putting out these awesome Blu-rays. I knew that, yes, I had to license all the movies for the distribution, but really, I just wanted to check out all the beta tapes in the Troma archive. And, to me, that's a dream to, make a living doing that and reviewing. And like I say, those Tromeo and Juliet dailies that I've never seen the light of day before, that's like gold dust to me. Like, just to see something that has never been, like, so for example, the Kabuki Man Blu-ray that I put out, I found a digibeta tape that said 1989 product reel. I'm like, what the hell's this? I play it, and what it is cut scenes from Kabuki Man that they put together whilst they were shooting the movie so they could show, like, foreign distributors to get some pre-sales in. But a lot of that footage has never been seen because Troma would throw away a lot of the negatives and everything because DVD wasn't even a thing. So the Kabuki Man Blu-ray has footage that has never seen the light of day, that has never been spoke about, which I find, to me, that's what these releases should embody, is essentially everything that praises the movie, but also things that got released around the time, like Edge TV and like Trailer, just to give people a feel of what Troma was like either in the early 90s or the mid 90s with Cannibal,
Or that DVD era, call it.
Dude, totally, yeah. The
99 to 04, yeah.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, to me, though, Troma's DVDs from, like, maybe 97 to maybe 2000, like, there were the silver spines, the black spines, and then they did the colored spines.
I have
And
a
to
bunch
me,
of them.
they're so gorgeous looking on the shelf.
It's funny to hear you say that, like, DVD is your, like, that's your format, because I feel similarly, where, like, I collect, VHS and Laserdisc and stuff, but if you put a gun to my head and was like, what's your favorite format? Like, you can only keep one player. Standard def DVD from an era when people authored them with love. That would be my answer.
Yeah, man.
absolutely.
There's some charm to DVD. I don't know what it is. It's, like you say, the menus, but also, like, this was the video transfer that was approved. There was no rescanning and then color correcting it and then making sure it's this. To me, DVD was a lot more like simple. People are pixel peepers. Now they're like, oh my God, this is a different. And to me, they're not. Because let's be honest, when we watch these movies on VHS or just like shitty cable satellite, we didn't really give a fuck about how it looked. We just cared about how cool the movie was. And sometimes, like with the 4K scans, do you really need to like reveal all that information? A lot of that information is probably not even meant to be seen.
It's just nerdy bullshit. I said that at the end of the doc. I was like, there's no wrong way to watch this movie. Like, this is just to preserve it, actually. This is just to put it on ice and make sure. And if, the fact that we all have large televisions, we can watch it on a large television.
I watched Goodfellas for the first time on VHS, and somebody was like kind of offended. They're like, how come you did that instead of, and I watched it on like, the TV, like the one behind me. And, they're like, oh, why did you do that? Like, there's 4K versions. Like, I don't understand why you even would consider watching a movie like this. Like, it's a vibe. It's like, it reminded me so much of just catching something on like TBS, where I was just like, the TV was on and you caught a movie. It was going to be in 4:3. It's going to look like shit, but you watched it, you got the story, and it's just like it's like a warm vibe.
Or middle of the night commercials if it's a Troma movie.
Oh yeah,
yeah. That's what you got to do, Liam. You got to get some old middle of the night fucking commercials, and you have to insert them artificially into the movie. And you'd be like, we didn't do any AI up-resing of these commercials.
So it's funny you say this, because on every Troma archive disc, there's something called digital excess. Now, what that is, Cannibal was hard to do, but the others are able to find old cable commercials from like USA Network Up All Night. UK, the UK channel in the UK was called Bravo, that would show Troma movies. I have a lot of those commercials. And what I would do with digital excess is just get a lot of the cool, quirky, rare stuff from YouTube and just put it on there as like a compilation at the end. Something that you could maybe like thrown in the background. So for example, the Kabuki Man one has like just so much Doug stuff and like the Kabuki Man cartoon stuff. And it's just like, to me, it's like leaving YouTube on, or just like, watching cable late at night, watching movies and then the commercials and everything. And there was a novelty, because back then, and I'm sure you used to do the same, guys, is that you'd like press pause or stop when the commercials happened and then record when the film returned.
Oh yeah.
But now I wish I didn't fucking press stop or pause, because these commercials That was like, to me, that's a time capsule.
It's as much a part of it as anything. Yeah, right. We have a friend he's a guest who's come on here, and he's got one of these big collector's rooms, right? And he put together like was it like a Raspberry Pi that just does nothing but cycle through like a certain era of like thousands of commercials, and he has like a Nickelodeon style TV or something.
Oh, that's so cool.
I definitely want to there's a lot of blank VHSs at my parents' house. I kind of want to go through them for that reason.
I'll tell you, Liam. There's a fucking car commercial. Okay, it's Super Credit Man. You want to talk about for me. If you can find this and put it on Blu-ray, I would move to the UK. Sure. It's the lost media of my life. Everybody's got, that's what's so remarkable about lost media is at this point, anything that's still lost, it must be really fucking lost.
Right.
Because somebody must have cared to find it and throw it on YouTube, right? So it's like a 30-second commercial. It's called Super Credit Man. And it's a used car commercial. And it's a guy, kind of like an out of shape, like Massachusetts guy that put on an inflatable Superman costume, not Superman though, Super Credit Man. It was a license free Superman, and it shows like a billboard of the car place, and you hear a woman in one audio track going, "Help, help! I need to buy a new car, but I don't have any credit." And then he walks out and he's like, "I can help. I'm Super Credit Man," and he takes like a foam. Bar, and he goes, "If I can bend steel with my bare hands, I can improve your credit faster than a speeding bullet." And I have half a mind to make a documentary called The Search for Super Credit Man and do everything I can to find it. And if we come up empty handed, maybe I have like as many people as will participate, make their own version, and we can maybe make our,
Frankie, I'm going to email you over a distribution agreement. Let's do it.
All right. There it is. Look, that's my first pitch.
So can we formally announce right now that the next Refuse Films Blu-ray release will be In the Search for Credit Man?
Fuck yeah. There it is. He was being cool earlier, but it is Search for Credit. No, I'm just kidding. But, it was you and I were chatting, and I discovered, to my delight, that we might have at one time in our lives crossed paths physically. Because I was on the set of Return to Nuke High, and you mentioned you had been there too. They filmed, the headquarters was an abandoned funeral home in Buffalo, Niagara, Buffalo, Niagara.
That's right. Yeah.
And so it was this kind of dank funeral home basement where everybody was sleeping in cots and whatever. So my friend Jeff was shooting a doc on Lloyd called Movies of the Future. I was just his DP. I just traveled around with a camera and grabbed B-roll. And then he only used so much B-roll, in the final thing. And so I cut together like a 45-minute documentary called 2 Days on the Set of Nuke High. And there's a lot of, I think, cool footage from it. And it's not appeared anywhere else. I put, very stupidly, I put it on YouTube publicly before the movie had even come out. And Lloyd was like, "You can't do it." Lloyd emailed me. It was very polite, actually. He was like, "Yikes, Uncle Lloydie says don't do that," or something. You're gonna make Uncle Lloydie poor, I don't know, something. He told me to not do it, and so I took it right down. If you ever put that movie out, I'd be happy to give that up.
Oh no, definitely do it. Hey, maybe you could record a commentary for the movie for the 2 days you were there. Yeah,
I would be like just those scenes.
No, the feature. I own the whole feature length, dude.
That'd be an honor. And I won't even charge anywhere near $500. Probably closer to $0 is what I would charge. So I was there when they set the dude on fire who ran down like the stairs.
Yeah.
I was right there, and I think the mayor of Buffalo, Niagara was there on the day, and I got a quick interview with him. And then there was like a scene where we were at like the dude's mansion, and I got to see the duck.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to hang out with the chick from Terrifier a little bit.
Catherine, yeah, Katie. Katie's great. She's a really good friend of mine.
Yeah, well, she actually has a lot of like natural charisma. Like she should be in all kinds of stuff. Like I actually think she could probably be in like, more popular films even than Terrifier's huge.
She definitely has that charisma.
But anyway, yeah. So that would be great. Yeah, if you ever do put that out, seriously, like I'm looking to give it to somebody. So yeah.
Maybe series 3. Series 2 is already being licensed and spoken for, but series 3, let's do it. Let's do In the Search of Credit Card Man or whatever. And In fact, how about this? How about this? We'll put on your 2-day documentary will be the main Blu-ray, and the movie will be like a special feature or something.
Now you're talking. See, this is the kind of like curated niche, thoughtful release that we've come to know from Refused Films.
Also, I don't want any 5.1. I don't want any stereo. I want dual mono. That's all I fucking want. I want the sound to sound like complete shit and compressed.
Well, I assure you, Super Credit Man is in mono. It will not be found. In fact, it's probably worse than mono. If you duplicate the audio, it'll probably just fall to mud. So, here's what's crazy about Super Credit Man. Okay, I didn't expect to bring you on and talk to you about Super Credit Man.
I love it.
Here's what's crazy about it. Everybody in this area remembers that commercial. You can't find somebody who doesn't know about that commercial, and it's not findable.
You guys have like public access TV with like archives of maybe.
That's the thing. Like, I got to go full Liam. I got to show up to the basement and start going through tapes. That's the only way we're going to.
I would have found those uncut Trey Parker and Matt Stone tapes because they were not on the inventory list because they were just the raw tapes, right? So when I discovered that, I'm like, I hope these are what I think they are, because to me, as you probably agree, Frankie, is that 13th anniversary disc, those interviews are just amazing. I watch them again and again, and it gets so good.
I just Googled Super Credit Man now, and the only thing that comes up is like our video, and then a Reddit post that's like, have you seen this commercial? Can you find it for me? And somebody comments, Red Cow Arcade talked about this.
So somehow all things Super Credit Man come back to me. I'm trying to get it back out there in the world. Well, here's a nerdy question. Those interviews, somebody was rolling a second camera in those interviews. Right. Did you were unable to find the second camera?
Oh no, I had both cameras, but dude, the sound was shit. So I don't know if you saw, but I had to take the audio from the other camera and then put it on Lloyd's camera. Okay. And then the Matt Stone one, the sound messed up so bad on the master tape because a lot of these, I call them master tapes. They were just tapes that Troma would just record over, just use tapes. So it was already fucked up as it was. So I had to take part of the DVD audio, but I was able to Frankenstein it together. So I was like, okay, so from filmmaking, I'm like, as long as you got good sound, okay, that's a win. And if it's just one camera, that'll be more forgiving than the bad sound and the dual camera.
And Lloyd would shove the camera in the subject's face the whole time so that he could get the good audio because he could not buy a shotgun mic because
exactly. But so the guy in the Trey Parker interview was sat all the way on the sofa or whatever. So that sounded terrible. So but the thing is with the Trey Parker interview on that disc, I didn't want to I had to put some of the beginning and the end, but just as we spoke about this, Frankie, just, the body language between Lloyd and Trey should be studied for years because there was some kind of disconnect between them the whole time.
Trey is inviting him into his home pretty much unfettered. And this is an Oscar-nominated, mega popular, very, very wealthy man who is also hungover and in a vulnerable state. He hasn't gotten dressed for the day. And then this old guy who he probably feels some kinship and some obligation towards, come on in and ask me about Family Guy and give me a cold taco. Normally does a pretty good job trying to navigate these big personalities to be reverent, but not to be too much of a kiss ass. Right. But yeah, it's an intimate setting being in the dude's house and being where do you want to interview, over on, and he was shooting it for the Make Your Own Damn Movie DVD box set. Isn't that right?
I think the Trey Parker interview was meant for at the time it was going to be the 10th anniversary DVD.
Not the 10th, not the 11th, not the 65th, but I think it's the 13th or 14th anniversary DVD of Trey Parker's Cannibal the Musical.
That's what happens at Troma. Sometimes it takes a long time for things to come out,
Was I too rough on the cover art on that DVD? Because I don't like it. I'm talking about the 13th anniversary one.
I do not like that whatsoever. I don't understand. The key art, this right here. Here we go. This is enough. This looks great. You don't need anything else. Don't fuck with the original.
I love that original. And you made it a little bit more washed out. It looked, whatever you did to touch it up was kind of cool. You made it distinct from the, you made it that kind of light tan color.
It's interesting because, Troma released 2 posters. One of them was very orange. And then the other was kind of a shell kind of sepia kind of thing. And we just kind of okay, what would look best on a slipcover, but without. I actually found the original transparency because back in the day, how they created posters, they put a transparency on top of a transparency. So I had the portrait of Trey, and then we just found the original logo because I don't know if it was the 13th anniversary, but some of the future Cannibal releases, there's a little difference between the Cannibal Musical logo. And to me, I always refer back to that original.
Yeah.
DVD.
I know what you're talking about. There's one that's like the C is a big mouth and stuff, and then there's like one. The place that I can remember it the best is in the Troma version of the Alfred Packer trailer, and it's like a little bit smaller, and all the letters are the same size, and it looks a little bit jankier actually.
That's right, yeah, because the original version of Cannibal that they released pre-South Park really was, as you've mentioned, the one with Don't Be Stupid. It was essentially the screen edge cut. And then I guess, when they were doing the DVD or a new Video Master, Troma paid to do some work with the sound. And I guess Trey then chose to remove those scenes just because I guess it was like anything. And you'll know as well, Frankie, when you've seen a movie you've directed many times, you're like, you want to go back in time to remove shit, right? To alter history.
It drives you crazy every single time. Yeah. I had so much fun going through all that archival material, which thank God you preserved. Even when I was talking about the 13th anniversary and the old, for any special features that you released in a higher res version, I was cutting to those instead of, we were good on copyright for 2 weeks. And then, IGATA, some Spanish based copyright hound, they didn't claim us, but they demonetized us. And I immediately counterclaimed with like, if this is not fair use, I don't know what the fuck is. And they released it immediately. But it's some like watchdog group that just looks for anything that
happens to me all the time. Even if I'm like streaming a video game, it'll be like Final Fantasy music, and it'll be like, some European country will be like, we claim this music. It's like, I don't think you own this. And it takes 3 months for them to like respond, and if they don't respond, they release it.
So I still put out Blu-rays myself. I print them at home.
Excellent.
But I put great care into them. We have a web series called Box Mac that's about making every single kind of macaroni and cheese that exists in the whole world, and it's turned into something much bigger than that. We've got Halloween specials, and it's a rabbit hole to travel down, I promise you. But I put out volume Blu-rays, and I put lots of care into the menus and all this, and put a lot of other content. And I do the 50 gigs. I put out all my own movies, the 5 features I've done on Blu-ray. And to this day, I'm using Adobe Encore CS6 to put them together because I've yet to find a better authoring tool. And maybe I'm just like kind of James Rolfian and that I can't like move on to new software. But what are you authoring with over there for software?
So Mark, who works at Maniac Films, who does all my post work, I believe he also uses Adobe because from what he's told me is that the authoring software that he uses, he has to use on an older computer because either this software doesn't exist anymore or it's not compatible with new computers.
Yeah, well, CS6. The last time it updated was 2012 or something. I mean, it's old.
Yeah, so like a lot of these like post-house places are still using Adobe.
So then that means that like Adobe CS6, it needs to become like open source or something, EJ.
Right.
It needs to become like how they resurrect old versions of World of Warcraft from like in these kind of like fan communities, or there needs to be a fan community around Adobe Encore CS6, and like because right now it's stuck in time and it struggles to run, and like there's a lot of bugs to work out in a CS6 project.
When I was QCing the Cannibal disc, there was a lot of like sound issues, not with the movie, but with some of the extras. And
we knew it.
So every time we'd re-export it, and then I'd send it to Mark to link up to the Blu-ray menu, it always like referred back to an older version of the video for whatever reason. So there is bugs within it for sure, So I don't have an answer for you when it comes to anything else.
I'm hyper. I've found out about myself that I'm very opinionated about things like button routing. I didn't know this about myself until I was making my own Blu-rays, and I was like, I'm the kind of guy who, if you have rows of buttons, I want right to take you back left to right, like you're reading a page, and I want left to go up. and I don't and I don't want it to go any other way. Yeah, so I'm in Encore always their automatic button routing is never to my satisfaction. So I'm always sitting there like manually button routing everything, and that if you miss one and suddenly you're like, oh, that's like a button you can't click on now, and you gotta go back to the drawing page.
Oh yeah, there's so many like just the whole infrastructure of like creating a Blu-ray, then having your graphic designer create menus, but the menus can only be like certain size. Like there's so much, and then pop-up menus. I don't use pop-up menus.
Yeah, I don't either. Oh God, we're gonna be best friends.
Yeah,
I hate pop-up menus as well.
Did we just become best friends? Yep. I'll tell you why I hate them. I'm a big boy. When I press play, I can watch the whole fucking movie. Right? I don't need to fucking
I don't
play
need to be
around.
interacting with anything.
No.
Yeah. Well, I think it's because we love DVD, and
it's a DVD.
All we ever wanted out of Blu-ray was high-res DVD.
That's right, but it never caught on as well as DVD. I think DVD was like look, Blu-ray is a success. Let's not, but DVD really, everyone had it. The Sony PlayStation 2 was like a game changer, right?
Blu-ray is more like the last man standing than a success.
What are you going to do, Liam? I got the news that like blank printable Blu-rays are going to be extinct, and I was like, oh shit! Like I better buy a few more batches and call it a day. What does a label do about that?
So there's something called duplication and replication. So we have all because we have like probably like 3,000 copies. So for example, the Troma films, we got 3,000 units. So because of that, we take it to Sony, and Sony manufactures everything. But by doing that, you've got to pay the Sony license because Sony created the technology. You've got to pay the Sony tax, which is every single time you put out a title, you've got to pay this fucking Sony, something like a few hundred.
Because you're licensing the format?
The Blu-ray format, yeah. So it's something
wow.
I think it's an AACS license or something. When it's right, tell me about it. So when it comes to duplication, like the print at home stuff, I will be doing that with the disc rot label because I obviously want that organic feel. By
the way, that's a great name. Disc rot.
Disc rot. Yeah, well, people love to talk about disc rot, man. I mean, I have laser discs, and do you guys ever like feel like when these videos come out, talk about your Warner Brother collection and everything? I always like to go through my whole DVD collection just to make sure, is everything still working? Okay, we're good. Like, I've still got DVDs from like 1998 that still work fine.
Yeah, so far so good. I have not run into an actual. I've been warned, and we always talk about. I've heard that the Columbia TriStar laser discs are extremely susceptible to this problem, but I've yet to encounter it myself.
I think it's just certain, manufacturing plants and the adhesives that they, use to put the discs together. That for me, I think like owning things is becoming cool again. I think for the longest period, especially over in the UK, IKEA kind of took over, and everyone wanted these minimalist houses with no identity. And like when I was a kid and I went to my friends' houses, I wanted to know what their parents had on VHS on the shelf because that tells you a lot about a person. I think now people are going back to that tangible item. I mean, the whole vinyl revival, like in 2011, 2012, probably started the whole physical media craze again. But I think with with streaming now, it's just spread so thin, and I feel like everything's so oversaturated. And like, I feel people are going to go back to owning things. I really do.
Obviously, GameStop is selling toys and shirts, and because there's like people will never not want stuff, especially here in the United States.
Oh yeah, even like some horror movies like Alien Romulus was out on VHS. Like they released a VHS. It's crazy.
Well, I gotta tell you, Liam, so this Box Match show we do. We had a fan come to us. Now he's a good friend of ours, Levi, and he was like, I'd like to put out the some episode like a best of on VHS, and it turned into a huge, really fun project where we pan and scanned the whole show, and I reformatted the titles to 4:3, and we put a DTMF tone at the beginning, and we put some, so it was great. We put a lot of care into it. We got a graphic artist to do the sleeve and stuff, and when we put those up for sale. And we only made 50 of each. We did 2. We did a Halloween special tape. It was like 5 specials. And we did like a best of. They were sold out in, like all 100 units were sold out in like 45 minutes.
That's amazing.
And whereas when I put out a Blu-ray, like, they sell, but not like that. No, nowhere near it. But Yeah, so I think it's like people want stuff again. People like, but like more than they want stuff, they want novelty. And you know, I think boutique Blu-ray is a way to make Blu-ray novel.
Oh, without a doubt, you know, especially with a slipcover. People love slipcovers because when you put them on a shelf instead of having like a plastic spine, it looks like a book or something, right? It looks more elegant. And look, I love it all. You know, I have many Blu-rays without slipcovers that play just fine. You know, like they look great. You know, I don't need a slipcover, but little things like that go a long way. And for me, with the Troma stuff, that's why I wanted to keep the key art on the slipcover, because I'm like, okay, this is the key art that people know of the movie. I'll go a bit experimental with the actual sleeve itself, right? You know, just to kind of like, and you know, I was going back and forth on that as well, because originally I was like, should I release it like the old Cannibal VHS in the black box where it says Cannibal? You know, what do I do here?
Did you ever wrestle with the concept of like, do I put it out as Alfred Packer the Musical, or would that even be allowed?
I didn't know marketing. I'd be shooting myself in the foot, you know.
It's true, but I feel pretty strongly that at this point, you either know that movie or you don't.
Exactly.
Like you're not buying it because it says Cannibal on the front.
No.
Now I understand why Troma made that decision when they did, because nobody knew Alfred. But now that was prior to South Park. So now, like, the reason you're buying that movie is because you know it's a Trey Parker film. And so I think like Troma could get away with being like, all right, you know what, it's Alfred Packer the Musical. Or if I was putting on another musical stage production of it, maybe I'd just call, you know, because I think Trey and Matt, to them it's Alfred Packer the Musical.
Oh, they still refer to it as Alfred Packer. I mean, I saw them. So the South Park 25th anniversary concert, they did 2 nights.
Oh, that was awesome.
It was so good. So I don't know if it was the first night they recorded or the second. I think they recorded the second night for the majority of the part. But on one of the nights, on the first night, he referred to it as Cannibal the Musical. But on the night where it was recorded, he called it Alfred Packer the Musical.
Yeah.
So on Paramount
Alfred
and
Packer the
everything,
Musical.
We were like 20 years old, and with a bunch of friends in college, we made a musical called Alfred Packer the Musical.
I've got a story about that as well. You know the footage behind where they show clips of Cannibal the Musical?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They had Paramount had to license that from Troma to show that footage.
Oh,
Seriously,
really?
man. But also, Paramount offered something dirt cheap to Troma, and Troma was like, no. So I'm not saying what Troma asked for, but Troma got what they asked for, and rightly so, because they do own that footage, and Paramount is a big conglomerate, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So everyone should have a payday, because it's not only Troma having a payday, Jason McHugh's getting a payday. Everyone, you know, because that movie's obviously made back its money, right? You know, over time. Yeah. Cannibal the Musical is going to be without a doubt in the top 5 best-selling Troma DVDs. At one time, Toxic Avenger and Cannibal was always like head-to-head. Everyone I knew that had that DVD, but the one thing, when I announced the Blu-ray, that everyone asked, the number one question, will it have the drunken commentary? That's like the main thing. People don't care about the film. It's the greatest commentary I've ever heard. It's such a trip every time I hear it.
Here's Toddy and I arguing, which happened quite a lot more in the next 8 years. And as of about 3 months ago, we're not dating anymore. Fucked up. I fucked up. Yeah, but now she doesn't care. Now she's fucking dumped me.
Come on, bro. You can make another movie.
Fucked up. And this was the first time we ever kissed, and then, of course, we kissed for 8 years after that until I fucked up. I fucked it up, man. I fucked it up.
Although your interview with Toddy, recontextualized it for me a little bit.
He was experiencing success like he'd never known. Maybe it's not the best time to be in a relationship, and it was too much for him to be able to handle with everything that was in front of him, you know? But it was damaging to me, and it was painful. Ultimately, there was a falling out that I wish could have been different. It's literally been 20 years since we've spoken, and that's still a little raw sometimes when I think about it.
Where I was like, basically her interview where she was like, look, we had this falling out. He was super weird to me on set, where he wasn't very, you know, sociable, and you know, because it sounds like he's pretty awkward when he doesn't know somebody, when he doesn't feel comfortable with somebody.
I mean, he'd never talked to me on set, never looked at me, never nothing. Like, he never came over and said, well, hello, nice to meet you. I'm so happy that you're playing this role, and I think you're going to, like, none of that.
That's why he has to surround himself with, like, more sociable kind of, like, advocates for him or something. Trey, that is. But he, you know, and she fell in love, and then it went south. all I knew about their breakup was from the drunken commentary. It was from him going, "I fucked up" and all that stuff. and then I hear her story, and geez, it sure sounds like Trey cheated on her. That's what it sounds like to me. And that she, because she was like, well, maybe he wasn't ready for a relationship when he was that famous, and there was all these other opportunities. But yeah, it sounds like and he said she dumped me in the drunken commentary. I didn't put all of this together in my documentary, but I picked up on all that, and I actually feel kind of heartbroken for her because the fact they haven't talked in 20 years, that's. I hate, I've had falling outs where like just for some reason we don't talk whatsoever anymore. That's always a shame. It's like, can't we passively know one another? Or, she used to pop up in South Park. She would do South Park voices once in a great while,
Yeah, she was in That's My Bush. She had a cameo in That's My Bush, the show.
Oh yeah, she was like the White House tour guide. Right.
That's right, dude. Yeah.
Over here you can see the president and the first lady having an argument about his commitment to their marriage.
Hi, kids. Can we not do this right now?
All right, let's move on to the next room. Mr. President doesn't like spending time with school children.
She was Kenny's girlfriend in Rainforest Schmame Forest.
Once this choir tour is over, we'll never see each other again, and that would devastate me. So I can't have any feelings for you. I just can't, Lenny.
She was the home ec teacher in Tweak versus Craig. I can't make love to you until I have a king-size bed.
I can't make love to you until we get a king-size bed.
I'm trying to think. Winona Ryder.
Winona Ryder in South Park.
My ping pong ball trick.
There, I didn't miss one. That's my ping pong ball trick.
That interview, though, it was one of because obviously we edit down the interviews, right? Because you've got to make an edit choice. These interviews would last an hour, but you've got to make choices. Now with Toddy interview, it's like, well, do we? I want to be as honest to Toddy's interview in the edit as you would do when you filmed it, and it is sensitive stuff, but at the same time, like you've mentioned, it adds another dimension to that drunken commentary, and it kind of complements. It's like, this was back in like 2000, and now we've got the answer, and that to me is what like these archival boutique releases should be about, is essentially celebrating all previous media formats, but also giving something a bit new as well to kind of contextualize it.
Like for a 39-year-old guy like me who's been following the movie for 30 of those years.
Dude, we're the same age. I turned 40 in 18 days.
I was going to ask. I was like, you know what? We got to be the exact same age. The eras of DVD he's talking about, like this is the most inside baseball about the most niche things.
Dude, let's be honest. We lived during the best time, right?
Yeah.
Growing up.
Oh, yeah.
So, wrestling was so cool back then. TV was so cool back then.
Totally
Music
true.
was so cool back then.
I think people loved movies in a way that they don't love movies anymore.
No, exactly.
Kevin Smith spoke for our generation, right? We all loved Kevin Smith. We all followed what he did. He was like one of us in a way.
And there was no online to create more influencers like that. So it was like, you're a filmmaker, so you achieve something we all want to achieve. And right. No, totally. I just think there was a love for that format, that 90 minutes, that 3-act structure. And I don't know about you. I just remember I'd show up to a big box store or to a video store or whatever, and I during the DVD era, I wasn't renting, I was buying. And I was buying movies I had not seen yet, like all the time. So I would, because they were a lot of times like in the bargain bins and stuff, they'd go for $5 or whatever. And as a teenager, I'd just be like, oh yeah, this looks cool. And I just amassed a huge DVD. Luckily I've not, unlike VHS, where I sadly threw out my collection when I was younger, and now I'm recollecting. DVD I always hung on to. I kept them in nice condition. They're not beat up. They're not chewed on by dogs or anything.
It was era of director's cuts. Yeah. Like I know the Schneider's cut was like the most famous one of recent years, but like, everything had a director's cut. Like you were like, I have to know what the director cut.
The DVD director's cut digitally remastered.
You'd say like the lovingly remastered DVD. What's it?
Welcome to the lovingly recreated, digitally remastered director's cut 2-disc DVD special edition, digitally remastered, beautiful version. of Cannibal the Musical.
Welcome to the lovingly recreated, digitally remastered director's cut DVD.
Let's watch.
Let's
What? Let's watch. Let's watch.
Let's watch.
Let's watch.
Lloyd's, become a really good friend. Someone I can. So I was on holiday, vacation, as you guys call it.
That's what we say here in Cowboy Land.
It was raining one of the days I were on vacation, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to put Troma now on. Why not? And I'm going to watch maybe Chosen One: Legend of the Raven with Carmen Electra. I've never seen it before, right? And I'm texting Lloyd whilst watching it, and he's like, "Oh, the milk scene." And I'm thinking, what milk scene? And there's a scene where Carmen Electra gets the milk and just pours it all over. And I love how Lloyd remembers that scene from the movie, but no one talks about. It came out in 1998. Carmen Electra. I just love that he knew that. I'm like, wow,
he's proud of it.
I remember I have footage of it on the set of Nuke 'Em High 2, or whatever. No, Return to Nuke 'Em High. Excuse me. It gets confusing, chronologically confused. They were doing the scene with four-wheelers and, I don't know, like a bunch of motorcycles.
Yeah.
The bullies were like circling the star there with the duck. And she had a fake duck, and they were taunting her and saying something about duck rape. And
duck rape.
Duck rape. They set up like a little tent for him, and he had a microphone. He had like he was on like a PA system. And because otherwise they wouldn't be able to hear him. And he was like, and when you say duck rape, say it maybe a little bit more kindly. I don't know. When you say duck rape.
When you guys handle the bird, try to jiggle it a little better so it looks more lively. And maybe only two of you should say duck rape. I'm fearful that the public won't understand what it is. Thank you.
I'm standing out in a field in New York. And he's like, when you say duck rape.
Are you saying duck rape's not a part of the vernacular? What are we talking about? It's a part of my everyday.
We were on holiday, or duck rape, as you call it.
Or on YouTube, we have to call it grape.
Because if not, you're going to have to unalive yourself, right?
I normally, the guidance is that don't say anything controversial in the first 30 seconds or something. But there have been a few times where we've said some of these trigger words. I've not run into trouble on YouTube.
No, I haven't either. But people are overly sensitive. I'm not sure for any good reason.
I think it's like when you have a lot to lose. When you have a huge channel and a lot to lose, but you're not looking at somebody with a lot to lose.
No, we do it for the love of the game.
We do it for the duck rape. Duck rape. Tell me a little bit about. So you're still promoting your last film?
Yeah, Eating Miss Campbell. It just got released in the US, in fact.
And I see the trailer was like a pre-roll on the Blu-ray. So it's like that's how I got introduced to the movie.
Put it on every single Blu-ray. I made the movie 2020, but then COVID happened, and then we had to delay production for 18 months. So, the film is like kind of like 2020, 2021. All my friends were turning vegan. And I thought it'd be funny if there was a vegan cannibal. And then because I grew up in the age of Columbine and 9/11, I was like, well, let's make it about a British school where there's an American headmaster, and let's get ratings by live streaming an all-you-can-eat massacre event. Meaning that the winner who eats the most food gets the choice of either shooting their school or killing themselves. Either way, it's great ratings. It's really a Brits kind of view of American high school violence, which I've heard is your favorite pastime. When I went to Colorado, I actually visited Columbine, and I'll be honest with you, dude, for someone who has been called an edgelord, and I do a lot of satirical humor, and very much like Trey Parker, very much like Lloyd Kaufman. I was really taken aback at Columbine. That's when it kind of just felt real to me. And the saddest thing is there's this memorial, and yet it's still happening, a weekly thing. I mean, we had one school shooting in the UK in 1993. And we were like, maybe this isn't such a good idea. Maybe we should put the guns away so this doesn't happen again. So the movie, I found when you make movies these days, you're going to be either left or right. And I kind of just take what Trey and Matt do and just offend both sides. Because to me, that's the only way you can be, impartial.
Well, there's nothing. Is there really anything worse than watching a movie and feeling like it came decisively from the left or the right?
I hate
where
it.
you're like, oh, this just came from somebody on Twitter. This is a movie made by somebody on Twitter.
I think also why I hate is when they try to play both sides, as in they've got, when it's not trying to say anything, but it's also not trying to push buttons, but it's also trying to make sure we're all good friends. Comedy should be about anything. What's really funny is, so Lloyd Kaufman has a cameo in the movie, and I gave him 3 pages of lines to read into camera, and he does it, but I'm like, okay, whatever. Maybe I'll just cut it down. And then, okay, he gets a gun, and this is like after he's like, he puts a gun up his nose and goes, Alec Baldwin. And then he looks at the camera and says, oh, cut that, it's awful. So I took an outtake of Lloyd saying Alec Baldwin with a gun and put it in the movie.
That's such a Lloyd joke, too.
Then Lloyd tells me that, like, Pat Kaufman, his wife, who's New York's, was the New York State Film Commissioner, is now, New York Film Commissioner. She's good friends with Alec Baldwin. So I don't think Lloyd's ever showed her the movie because obviously...
Pretty good of a guy who's an Oscar nominee to hang out with a bunch of drunken retards.
How nice was Trey? How nice is that? How cool is it that an Oscar-nominated guy is willing to put up with a bunch of drunken retards?
That is from the Tales from the Crapper documentary, right?
You put kind of like a Troma roll, on the Blu-ray, and it's in there too.
That's what I tried to do as well. It's like anything that Trey has been in previously, like the Terra Firma cameo, the Tales from the Crapper cameo, all that kind of stuff. It's all in one place, guys. You don't have to use 5 or 6 DVDs. And what's really funny is back in school, I used to bootleg movies to show people, to share around. Like I would always bootleg Troma movies and not sell them, but just to be like, you need to check out this really fucking cool stuff. And now I'm kind of doing it legally. Cool. It's a dream come true, dude. And look, man, I want to be honest with you. I wake up and I'm like, I'm doing the thing I've always wanted to do. So like, I lost my mum at a really young age. I lost my mum on August 11th, 2001. So this was pre 9/11. So like when 9/11 happened, it didn't mean much to me because I was already going through my own fucking, I was only 16 at the time. But like, she always wanted me to like go to Cannes with Troma. That was always my dream as a 16-year-old. And it's just nice to think like, if she was, I think she'd be like really proud. Or like, I'm really shocked that I'm able to, talk to you guys about my love for Troma, and we share similar stories. And like, a lot of this stuff, made up my teen years. It got me through a lot of stuff, and I'm sure it did you as well. I mean, coming home, putting it on the Troma DVD was an escape, and it was something I always look forward to.
I have a theory that to have a sound mind, to fight depression, to fight anxiety, to stave off all this negative shit that will destroy you and ruin your life, you need 2 things. You need a project or a mission. Something where when you get up in the morning, you're like, okay, and then I got to do this, and I got to do that. Something where you're like, oh yeah, okay, I'm going to digitize those tapes, and I still need to fix, something that gets you moving, that you're a little bit excited about, or at least like that propels you. And then that's not enough. Number 2 is meaningful relationships, like people that are some kind of shared community, some kind of like somebody who checks in on you, somebody who cares what's, if you stop talking for a week, they'd be like, where's Frankie? We sometimes talk about the angry video game nerd on here, who Lloyd of course appeared on. And there's kind of this meme that like everybody tells him that he saved their life, and it's funny because it's a YouTube series about shitting on Bugs Bunny and, swearing at games. And how could that save your life? Well, it's like, well, the reason is because it's creative. And because there's a fan community around it. There's just a lot of loneliness and wayward people or young people who would get up to something completely different, and creativity. I especially, I'm going to go out on a limb and say like young men in particular have a kind of like inherent aggression at that young age where they want to point it somewhere, and that's how a lot get into drugs or whatever. But if you can point that towards, for me, it was like I'll always be grateful to filmmaking, the art of filmmaking, because it just kind of pointed me in a direction. It was like, go care about that a lot, and so many relationships. The reason that I've traveled, just by choosing filmmaking, it opened up all this stuff. And in that, I hope and assume that I would be on an okay track without it. But now having a daughter, one of the things that I kind of pray for with her is that she's going to find that thing, something to Yeah, as her North Star.
The thing about Troma and Angry Video Game Nerd, that creativity just seems so attainable. It made it look like you could do it.
We can take you from how did they do that to I can do that.
My friend Jeff used to say that the Ramones were that for music. There are some bands where it's like, well, they're just playing a few chords. So maybe music is not some unattainable, highly skilled, advanced thing that I can't get into. He used to joke, he was like, nobody watches Stanley Kubrick and says, I could be a filmmaker. You might admire him. He might be one of the greats, but nobody goes, oh yeah, I could do it too. You know?
Oh yeah, I can do better than this. What the fuck's this?
Yeah. He's not really inspiring in that sense, you know?
You know, it's interesting because like, I mostly speak to Americans every day. I speak to our mutual friend, Zach Baines. I always call him Zach Baines because it's an inside joke. I speak to Zach every day. I speak to Rich a lot. I speak to my friend Kevin Walter. All of my American, just because there's no one in England that really kind of understands this stuff. So I'm in America at least 4 or 5 times a year just to hang out with Trent, Haaga, Lloyd Kaufman, Zach Baines in Colorado, because to me, Troma and like just a lot of creative stuff to bring similar people together. It's like, the island of misfit toys in a way,
It's a creative community. Yeah, right. It's the weird kid who watched Troma in every school.
Yes.
Gets to hang out. Everybody who loves Cannibal the Musical commented on my video. All 7,000 of them. There's exactly 7,000.
I just want to say, and it's great that we've started talking, guys, because it's nice just to, speak to fellow film fans. And because at the end of the day, yes, it is a business, but at the same time, it's like, I love these movies, or else I wouldn't license them, I wouldn't put them out, because that'd be cynical and jaded. And that's the last thing I want to do is be like, hey, pay $40 for this thing because it's a nice slipcover and it's 4K transfer, blah, blah, blah. To me, it's about like the soul of it and the kind of like DVDs. They had a charm to them. They had an identity. The labels had an identity. And I think with Refused Films, we're a bit underground, a bit punk rock, but at the same time, it's the hardworking punk rock that really, like Troma is a hardworking punk rock outfit. ECW back in the day was that, independent wrestling organization.
I think Lloyd used to put it as, we don't take a content seriously, but we take the effort very seriously, something like that.
That's right. That's another thing. It's like a lot of people take Troma very surface level. So all they see is like fart jokes and naked women and people shitting and pissing on themselves, right?
Right.
But they don't understand the actual layer of what it's trying to say and what it's trying to do. And there's so many layers to a Troma film, especially the Kaufman Hearst movies, where you're like, you can keep going back to them because there's always something else to see. Or, Romeo and Juliet is my favorite movie of all time. The soundtrack, it was shot in 1995. There's something about that mid-90s feel about it, the aesthetic, and James Gunn has always had a great ear for a soundtrack. You can hear it back in that movie. And to me, that was like Troma at their like, okay, Kabuki Man bombed, what we're going to do? And they did Romeo and Juliet. And that was their kind of like, okay, this is our rebrand. Terra Firma came out. Citizen Toxic came out a year after that. Hardly ever happened back then. And that to me, it was that mid to late 90s, early 2000s Troma boom. That was, when I think about Troma, I think about that time.
And then when I saw Cannibal, all the trailers were the 3 movies you just named. So I was like, oh, it looks like there's something to watch.
Well, without a doubt. And to me, Troma, and like I say, there's so many filmmakers and, it's really funny. At my old workplace, I actually watched the YouTube video many moons ago when you guys when you, Frankie, reviewed the documentaries.
Right.
Right. And it's really interesting, man, because it's like, I can completely see what you were saying, but I've also, I can also see the cult of the whole kind of Troma thing as well, because I am a part of that. But, at the same time, like Lloyd, I wouldn't be where I am without Lloyd. And whenever I'm in New York, he lets me sleep at his house. And to me, that's such a surreal thing, because this is a guy that like means everything to me when I was 11 years old. And now he's a friend.
Yeah. This English kid that gets to sleep at his house. Yeah. Right.
Right. How cool is that,
Crazy.
Man? Now that is privilege. That is white privilege, right?
Because Lloyd doesn't let black fans sleep in his house.
Oh, shit.
The guard is big fat guy with and I think he's black on top of it.
All the talk of the documentaries, you've got me thinking, could I in the style of the Cannibal doc that I put together. What about like a kind of, like a large format YouTube video about like these major filmmaking lessons that you can find in those, and because there's 5 or 6 of them, right?
That's right. There's
something like 7 hours of these things. And could I put together like a 1 hour that's kind of a little bit more like zoomed in, and, one's about like gun safety and one's about wasting money and one's about, would that be kind of interesting? I don't know, maybe.
I think so. No, I think those documentaries definitely need a retrospective. I mean, out of them all, my personal favorite is the Apocalypse Soon Making of Citizen Toxie documentary.
Yeah.
Just because
it just feels so fucking crazy. Yeah. Everybody's sweaty and
Your patience is going to be tried. There is, but it ain't. The movies, at least in our movies, the shooting schedule means very little.
Oh yeah, it felt so uncomfortable. Even Poltergeist though, that felt really dirty compared to like when I went to Return to Nukem High. I was kind of surprised. It at least had 2 showers in the funeral home.
Where we eat, sleep, and shit together.
This is your room?
This is my room right here.
Well, you remember they had those DP, they hired a crew. And so the movie looks like a digital movie from 2012. It's up to that standard. Honestly, it kind of looks, it looks high quality in the way that your film looks. Like it's like which is not an aesthetic I was used to with Troma at that time. And so they hired this crew and they paid them. And there became kind of a lords and peasants thing that happened on the set, where there was these kind of this group of like Hollywood guys that were shooting the movie, and all of these Troma fans that were, I don't know, apparently, according to the footage I shot, there was a young lady who was doing special effects. And I was interviewing her about her experience in the funeral home, and she was like, it's really disgusting because all the guys are jacking off into the shower, and so it gets clogged with cum. And I was like, oh my Lord.
The semen shower, if you go into the bathroom, you'll see there's like an inch or 2 of water when you get in, and that's because guys jerk off into it, and it clogs it. So when you get in, it's like stepping into semen. I've asked around to see who's jerking off in the shower, and no one could give me a straight answer.
It's like the Zodiac Killer.
Trying to dodge the jizz in her own shower. That's a Troma movie. When you say duck rape.
I'm fearful that the public won't understand what it is.
Well, listen, this was amazing.
No, seriously. First of all, I just want to say, guy, thanks for the video. It's really like helped some sales. Thank you so much. And
did it really push a couple of sales?
Definitely, yeah, dude. Thank you so much. Yeah, I can eat this week. Yeah, dude. No, seriously, thank you. But also, I also just want to say, like, I'm all for, Vinegar Syndrome's a great company, and I think there's some kind of on Reddit. I think I'm being made to look like this kind of like guy who hates Vinegar Syndrome or doesn't understand what they did or whatever. And I just want to say that's not the case. But also
there's like 5 retards who said that. Let's just not.
I know.
I mean, it is Reddit. There's a few.
I'm not really used to Reddit. I'm kind of like primitive when it comes to Reddit. I'm more of an Instagram guy, or I don't know. So I just want to say that, if you're fans of the movie, buy both releases. That documentary, the Vinegar Syndrome one, is fan-fucking-tastic. And the uncut interview on the Trey Parker one's really good.
Tell you what, next time you have a big release, we would love for you to promote it on here. That would be, and I think that would be helpful for a lot of people, because these are limited run things. And a lot of times what they're wondering is like, so what makes this one special? What makes this one different? That's, probably what they, as a matter of fact, when I put out the doc, a few people were like, oh, this is really helpful because I was trying to figure it out. And there was like one Reddit post that had 2 screenshots, and that was like kind of all I could go off of. So yeah, I think that'd be great to be able to talk a little bit about so here's what we were thinking when we put this together type of stuff.
No, yeah, guys, look, I'm down for anything. If thank you again for inviting me on here. It really means the world. And let's keep in contact, awesome. That'd be really cool.
Where's the sound guy? Get the sound guy here and watch this. Where's the sound man? Get him here and watch it. Get all the other people around. Get the art department and get me a background people.
Subscribe to Red Cow Entertainment on Patreon for full episodes every other week.